please rise for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, looks like everyone is present this evening, so let's go ahead and get started. We have a public hearing, second reading. So I guess there's no presentation on this one. I will just entertain a motion. First, I'll say what we're doing here. It's a public hearing, second reading, on an ordinance that would amend the transportation system plan and the comprehensive community development plan. And we had the first reading at our last meeting. Valerie.
I would like to move to approve the ordinance amending the Grants Pass 2040 Transportation System Plan and the Comprehensive Community Development Plan and have it read by title only, second reading.
Thank you. Second from Rick. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Valerie, you made the motion to approve. How do you vote?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Vanessa? No. Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-1.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass amending the Grants Pass Transportation System Plan and the Comprehensive Community Development Plan.
All right, thank you. Our second public hearing is a new one. So this one we'll open up with a presentation. We have an ordinance to create a reimbursement district for the Kickin Cattle Company.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is a reimbursement district for the Kickin Cattle Company Planned Community Development. So it'll be a reimbursement district for water improvements. Now, just an overview of the reimbursement districts. So per Chapter 9.40 of the city's municipal code, which was last amended by Ordinance 175726, reimbursement district basically is a contingent liability placed on properties within a district formed by the city to permit the installer of public improvements to recover a portion of the installation costs that are constructed adjacent to intervening properties. So basically, if a property benefits in any way from infrastructure going in, they can be on the hook for this district. This particular district will remain in effect for a period of 15 years. From the date of the final ordinance. So this is just the initiating ordinance, first ordinance. We'll come back after the project is done and do a final ordinance with final costs. So these are just the estimated costs that you guys will hear. So for this particular district, this is a developer installed water line. It's going to be installed on Carnahan Drive from Rogue River Highway to the south for approximately 670 feet. This supports council goal to maintain, operate, and expand our infrastructure to meet our community needs by ensuring our water facility infrastructure needs are met in a fiscally sound, efficient, and regulatory compliant manner. So this map is a map of the properties involved in the district. It can be found on page 168 of your council packet. Carnahan Drive is located off of Rogue River Highway, which is just west of the city limits boundary. And the lot marked as number 10 on this slide is basically driving this district. This is the partition that's going to be, I believe, 5 tax lots. So we'll get into the estimated assessments. So for this entire water line to go in, the applicant is estimating it to be around $140,000. That does include contingencies, which may or may not be used. So the final cost may come in significantly less than what you're seeing here. Properties will pay upon development or connection to city water, and they'll either pay the residential per dwelling unit assessment if it's a residence, or the non-residential acreage and frontage assessment, whatever the development is at that time. So our estimated water assessments for non-residential range anywhere from $8,200 to basically $10,500. And for the residential assessments, depending on how many dwelling units are put on a lot, it'll be $1,376.50 per dwelling unit. This one does have a special circumstance in the fact that we have taken in some what we call fee in lieu agreements for, looks like 3 of the properties in the district. What a fee in lieu basically is, and if any of you haven't heard that the phrase before, fee in lieus or FILs replaced our deferred development agreements back in 2017. The city started taking in a portion of what the cost would be to install the improvements if the developer was able to pay rather than install those improvements. And they pay based on the classification of streets. So a arterial or a collector street would pay 50% of that estimated cost. A local street would only pay 25% of the value of those improvements. So relatively good deal for developers. And then the city's able to utilize those monies on capital projects and other items that council has approved for the budget year. In this instance, property 5, 8, and 16 from your map, that's on, again, page 168 of your council packet, have significantly less assessments, and that's due to that reduced amount that we take in for those. So these amounts would then be, once the final ordinance is adopted, these amounts would be turned over to the developer, basically in lieu of that full property assessment. So community development staff's been working with the developer on this district. Following meetings and notices have been conducted. A few weeks ago, February 14th, we sent out public hearing notices with those estimated reimbursement fees and what they would be. And then this evening, we're having this public hearing to talk about this first ordinance. And just to clarify, we have not received any responses from the hearing notice mailing, either by email, mail, or phone calls. So as far as the imposition of assessments, these fees would become due for the water improvements, which is what this one is, at the time of application to connect to the installed water line, or in the case of new development, at the time of issuance of a development permit or the filing of a plat, whichever of these items occurred first. And then again, after all the final costs are submitted, once the project's completed, we'll come back to council for a final ordinance to be adopted. And then the collected funds will be returned to the developer, which is P Squared Inc., as property owners in the reimbursement district develop or connect to city water. And with that, staff recommends adoption of the ordinance as presented, although there are alternatives that can be made as well.
Thank you. Council, what questions do you have? Rick and then Rob.
Thank you, Eric. When the water main is put in, does that include laterals to each property?
This only includes the main infrastructure. Specific laterals to each property are not a benefit to the entire district. So at that time of connection, property owners would have to still pay their permit fees and any meter drops, laterals, things like that.
Are the property owners aware if they're able to join in installing a lateral at this time when they're doing the main?
To be honest, they should be aware. They received a hearing notice. The work will be occurring in their neighborhood, so they can definitely contact the contractor. Without it being a city project, they would need to contact that developer directly.
Okay, last question then. After the main is put in, is it just a ditch that's been filled in, or is it going to actually be a whole new surface on the road?
For this, I'm not quite sure. I believe it's probably just going to be a trench patch back.
Okay, thank you.
Rob, then Val?
Yeah, so I thought I was, I thought I understood the concept of a DDA fairly well, and now the fee in lieu seems similar, but the question I have is on slide 5, the properties, I guess, that have essentially paid up front appear to be getting a prepayment discount. Would that be an accurate assessment?
I would say that's a fair assessment.
So the question is, assuming that the full assessment is not an inflated price, and I was assuming that that actually reflects actual funds needed to do the work, who pays, where does the discount come from? Who pays?
For this particular one, this is one that the developer is going to wind up eating the cost for that, and that's based on those basically reduced rates for the 25 and 50% based on the street classification.
So you're saying the developer is going to eat the difference?
Yes, for this particular district. If it was a city project, the city would utilize this money. What the fee in lieu basically does, it allows the city to utilize that money not for particular that frontage that's going in. It just so happens that there's fee in lieu agreements that have been done on this road, and now a developer is putting that water line in rather than the city going and doing a capital project to install that.
I guess I don't understand. My understanding of this is no greater than when I asked my question as to, so why would a developer agree to that? It doesn't sound like a good deal for them. Why would they agree to that?
For them, these property owners already have this agreement with the city, and so we can't go back and basically reassess them at a higher rate because of the agreement that they have signed with us.
Thank you.
Valerie?
Yeah, my question kind of goes along that way. But the fee in lieu of agreements don't have to do with the water. They have to do with the streets. Am I correct?
So fee in lieu can be for streets, curb gutter, sidewalk. It can be for water, stormwater, sewer,
Okay.
all of those, depending on what infrastructure needs.
Okay, so in this case, it is actually for the water.
Yeah.
Okay, because I do remember when we went through the process of changing the deferred to the fee in lieu of, it was at that point, it was kind of my understanding, it was because we knew that different streets, we knew we couldn't pave everybody's sidewalk or make a sidewalk in front of everybody. That was just not realistic. And so instead, we lowered the costs, saying that depending on whether you were on a busier street, those would be our priorities to put sidewalks in as arterial and not necessarily the neighborhood streets. Am I correct? So I guess I always looked at it as a street thing, not necessarily a water. But, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this issue? All right. I'll close the public hearing and turn it back over to council for discussion. Brian?
I move to adopt the ordinance creating the developer-installed reimbursement district, CC 6537, for the Kickin Cattle Co. Planned Community Development, and have it read by title only, first reading.
Seconded by Val. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Brian, you made the motion to adopt the ordinance. How do you vote?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass creating a developer-installed reimbursement district, CC 6537, for the Kickin Cattle Company Planned Community Development.
Brian again.
Same thing, second reading.
Is there a second? Dwayne, any discussion on this? All right. Brian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass creating a developer-installed reimbursement district, CC 6537, for the Kickin Cattle Company Planned Community Development.
All right, thank you. Moving into council action, item A, we have a resolution that would authorize the city manager to submit a grant application on behalf of our fire department, and we have our fire chief presenting.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, council members. Is it on now? There we go. Okay, good evening, Mayor, council members. Tonight, before you, I have brought to you consideration for us to apply for a SAFER grant. It is for firefighter staffing within the fire department. The SAFER grant is a FEMA grant. It's the Assistance to Firefighter grant. The application period is currently open between February 13th and now it's going to close out on March 17th. So we're in the process of creating all the language and putting together the grant request. The SAFER grant is, as I said, a FEMA grant. Is for assisting, in this case, paid fire departments with adequate staffing for fire and emergency response. The goal is to improve the staffing levels so that fire departments can meet the NFPA 1710, which is the paid fire departments, and then 1720 would be volunteers. The funding we're seeking is for 4 firefighters. It's a 3-year award. We expect to possibly hear about the award in November. This year we found out we were not successful, and we found out in January. So there still is a possibility we won't hear if we're actually successful until January of '24. We expect to, if we are successful and council wishes to go forward at that point, we would go forward and start to fill our positions somewhere in January, February of '24. There's no requirement to retain the firefighters after the 3-year period. And the main thing about once you enter into the agreement, you cannot reduce the staffing for the fire department during the entire contract period. So for 3 years, we would not be able to reduce staffing. So the amount we're seeking is for $1,626,336, and that is for 4 firefighters for 3 years. It will cover all their salaries and benefits, and as I said, it's for a full 3-year period. So from the time we actually hire them for 3 years, that's how long they're funded. The annual salary range for a firefighter is $65,000 to $80,000, and with the benefits, we're averaging their total cost at about $135,500 per year for each firefighter. There's no matching funds for the city, and there is, though, a one-time cost up front of approximately $67,200 or so to pay for basically outfitting them with PPE, some of the upfront costs that go into hiring a new firefighter. So as you've heard many times, we've talked about the matrix study that was done for the fire department, and it was completed in 2018. At that time, they recommended that we increase our staffing to three minimum per engine. So what they're basically were stating back in 2018 is that we needed to hire a total of 12 personnel to reach 3-person staffing on every engine. Three positions under their calculations, you need to hire 1.29 employees to cover vacation, holidays, sick leaves, things of that nature. So that's why we've come up with 4 firefighters for this particular situation. Typically, I think last year we requested 3, but I believe we need to have that additional firefighter available to cover these types of planned events. There are unplanned events that occur as well, but this would be strictly for those planned type events. As you can see, the cost back then was $1.4 million for the same, well, basically it's 12 firefighters, but if you did our math, you're basically looking at similar types of numbers. We would be at 1.6 for 12 firefighters for 1 year. So this is what the matrix study said based on the increased staffing to 3-person minimum on all engines. The required personnel are the first column, which they felt was the required for all these types of incidents. The middle column, of course, is what we currently have, which is what we have today, 7. And they were proposing by increasing the staffing to 3 per engine to get you to 10. So we were still somewhat short in some areas, but we were doing much better in some of the other types of emergency incidents. So if we're fully staffed, and I mean if we have everybody up and running on our current staffing, we can sometimes reach 3-person staffing at Parkway Station, and we estimate about 30% of the time we can actually have 3-person staffing at Parkway. The other 2 stations would still be at 2-person. That's pretty common staffing. The minimum staffing daily is 2 per engine, plus the battalion chief, which, as I've said several times, it's 7 personnel is what you have on duty every day. With the students, we have 3 student positions, but we've just lost 2 of those, and we're down to 0 at this point, so we don't have any students left. We're going to have to go back out and see about bringing in students again. So what we're trying to do with these 4 positions is actually get our 3-person minimum staffing at the Parkway Station. Again, if we went with 1.29 personnel per station, that would be 3.87, and basically get you to the 4. And vacation, sick leave, and training would help out with that fourth firefighter to minimize overtime, callbacks, things of that nature. Parkway, as you know, is our central station. It can quickly respond to all areas of the city. It's close to the industrial area. And we also have our truck or aerial there, which the staffing, at times we might even be able to get 4-person in there on occasion, which is exactly what you need to staff a truck. So 30% of the time we're estimating we could even have 4-person at the station, which again, this is our busiest station and district. So looking again at the responses from the different stations, you can see Hillcrest at 1,700 plus, Parkway over 3,800, and then Redwood at just about 1,100 per year. And that's based on last year's numbers. So again, we're looking at putting this extra personnel at Parkway. So again, at Parkway, we have the battalion chief, we have an engine 8, which responds out there on a regular basis. We have truck 28, and last year we had 3,889 calls. So what's the benefit to us getting to this level? First and foremost, we'll get closer to 1710 standards, which is what we're shooting for eventually, where we could put 14 personnel on the scene of a structure fire. It'll give us 8 to 10 personnel serving daily in the city. We'll be able to meet the 2-in, 2-out OSHA requirements with our first engine and the battalion chief. So we only need 1 engine and a battalion chief, whereas today we need at least 2 engines and the battalion chief to respond to get us to the 2-in, 2-out standard. It'll also give us those opportunities I mentioned with the 4 personnel on the truck. And in fact, when we have those 4 personnel at that station, we could respond the truck and the engine to an incident, have the truck at scene as well at the same time, and be much more effective on something along a commercial line or a multi-story type structure fire. The other benefit, of course, is we're able to perform simultaneous critical tasks on the fire ground. So while 2 personnel are pulling the line to take it to the front door, we've got somebody on the pump panel charging the line, hooking up a supply line to make sure that that line is fully charged and activated during the entire time. And then we can also have an incident commander on scene to look over the safety of the folks there and manage the overall incident. And that can happen with the first arriving incident, or the first arriving crews. Of course, crew stress and fatigue is reduced, and injury and work lost time reductions we expect will be a savings as well because of the less strain and work put forth on the incident. So the call to action is at the council's discretion. At this point, we're seeking approval to go forward with the application for 4 firefighters for 3 years with a cost of $1.6 million. Your alternatives, of course, do not apply for the grant or apply for more or less personnel.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions? Valerie?
Yes, thank you, Chief. That was a great presentation, something we all need to hear. I have a question about the last grant that we went out to. I know a lot of times when you go for a grant and you don't get it, they give you feedback as to why you did not get that grant. I was wondering if there was feedback that we received from the first time around that you shored up in hopes that this time it might happen?
We did not get any feedback, and we sought feedback and they would not provide it. So you're kind of shooting in the dark a bit. We are seeking more review from other folks that have been successful, looking for other opportunities where we can get some feedback. We are working with Lexipol right now. They have a grant writing aspect in their company, so we can even supply them with last year's grant, let them review that. We're just about finished up with writing the grant. We expect it to be what I call in very rough draft form by the end of this week, where we can submit it for other folks to review it for us and get that feedback, and then we really want to get it submitted by the 13th of this month.
Thank you.
Rick, then Joel?
Thank you, Chief. I think this is a really good idea. A couple questions I have. So when you have a fire, do you just send one truck? You always send 2 trucks?
Well, if it's a structure fire, we send all 3, and we at least get them on the road. We can always get that first unit at scene, assess, what the extension is at that point, and then be able to, cancel a resource at that point. But we find it's better to get them on the road. The time is critical, and getting the additional staff on scene is important. But in most all cases, 2 engines responds just so we can have 4 personnel on the scene.
Good, appreciate that. Also, with the IGA, with Rural Metro, do they respond?
They do, yes. In fact, on a structure fire, we would get 3 personnel. There are 2 on the engine plus their battalion chief.
Okay, thank you.
Joel, then Rob?
Well, I appreciate you, Chief, looking out for the future of our city by having your antennas out there for grants. I'm trying to search my brain. What would be a reason that we wouldn't put in for this grant?
Well, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, once we enter into this contract, we cannot reduce our staffing for 3 years. That would be the only drawback that I can see. Also, there is, there's still overtime obligations that can come up with these types of things. It's not, that 4th firefighter won't eliminate all of our overtime, but it will help out. And there is some cost up front of, approximately $70,000 to the city to outfit these folks.
Thank you.
Aaron?
I just want to add to that. So it's on the dais, but it was information that we just received looking into the grant process that just reaffirms what the chief mentioned, and wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to digest that. But it's the council memo 13/2023, which basically does state that if we do reduce services, we'll be in default of the grant and we would lose those 4 positions.
Rob, then Brian?
So it says in the presentation, city cost one time, $67,266. So I'm assuming that's just if we get the grant, that's not to apply?
No, that's strictly once we are successful and we hire the firefighters, we have to outfit them with all their safety gear and put them through some training, things of that nature.
So approximately the last time you applied for the grant, or this time, whichever is a better estimate, approximately how much does it cost in staff time to apply?
Oh, and staff time to apply? That's interesting. There's a lot of work going on in the office next to me, and I hear things, but I'm not exactly sure if it's always on this. You know, and to basically, you know, Susan, the city staff is very helpful in this process. She puts in a lot of time. I can estimate maybe 20 hours or more at least of actual time put into this.
Thank you. It's close enough. Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Brian, then DJ, then Rick.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. So if we get the grant and we hire the firefighters, we must maintain staffing for 3 years with no reductions. I thought I saw in the memo that if there's some sort of catastrophic financial issue the city has to come to deal with, that there is some sort of clause that gives us an out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And this is what I've read. I've never experienced any of this myself, so I can't tell you I've been through this, but they do say you can ask for a waiver, give good justification for why you need to do what you're doing, and they will consider that in the in the decision as to whether or not they'll let you out of your grant, or they potentially may allow you to stay at the new level you've chosen, keep your firefighters, and move forward. That is also a possibility.
Very good. Thanks.
DJ?
Sure, I have a few questions. It says that we will not be able to reduce the number of firefighters or keep any positions vacant during the funding period. That's any and all positions within the fire department, correct?
That is correct, yes. Now, again, I'm not exactly positive on that because we have to submit a roster at the time we get the successful grant, and they will look at that roster, and then they'll look at the new names that we've listed, and they'll make sure that they are separate, they're not the same. So I assume that I don't know if we have to submit our prevention staff as part of this. I would assume it would be primarily our battalion chiefs all the way down to our firefighters, which are typically our response workforce.
Sure, and anticipated notice of the reward and receipt of grant is November, December 2023?
Yeah, we expect, like I said, that we found out this year in January that we were not successful. So my anticipation is that it might be the same time frame, but they do say they are supposed to award and notice you in November, but they've been behind in their processes in the past.
Sure, okay. And this seems great, it does. But I'm reasonably nervous about the quota that we have to meet to maintain what I'm just going to say is all level of staff for fire department. So open-ended question to you, perhaps JC, Aaron, about extrapolating our financial capabilities into, locking in that staffing level for fire department. How confident are we in our financial capabilities to marry ourselves to this agreement?
So I do, I'm on the same team. I do want us to see a service that the community definitely needs, but financially speaking, we don't have the long-term resources at this point to sustain this level of service. So even if we were to make it through the 3-year period, at the end of that period, we don't have a solution to retain all 4 of these as well.
Rick, and then Val.
So Chief, in the past, you've mentioned Grants Pass can be the training ground for firefighters. In fact, you said 3 of our volunteers have already left. In that agreement where we have to maintain staffing at the level, what happens if we can't find people even though we're offering and those positions are open? Does the waiver then kick in, or is there a penalty because we have people that are left and we can't find new candidates?
I think, and again, I'm speculating a bit, but right now we have, I believe, 7 firefighters on our hiring list. We just did a interview process and put folks through that process. Now, we find many times once we get an opening that list has dwindled and people have left. So all I can tell you is based on today's look at things, we do have that many available to come forward. We were actually putting that list together with the anticipation we might get the SAFER grant this year, so we went through that process to prepare for that. And we would go through a similar type of process of doing our recruiting, getting our list built, and move forward with that. Also, we would like to go forward next year with 6 students, hopefully creating a larger pool of students. With that number, maybe we'll get more interest from students to put in for the position as well, knowing they might have a better chance of getting that type of opportunity. So those are some things we're trying to do to improve that recruitment process.
So
Thank you.
active recruitment of an open position would not put the city in default.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that. As long as you are continually recruiting, you can have those vacancies. You just need to prove that you are continually recruiting for those vacant positions and not necessarily doing a bait and switch.
Valerie?
Yeah, I was going to go back, I think, to Rick's question about the 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, we don't have to hold on to those people.
No.
Correct, okay.
We do
So
not.
I just wanted to clarify that at the end of the 3 years.
There's no
it's a
obligation
There's
after
no
3
obligation
years.
after that 3 years. Okay,
No, there's
thank you.
not.
Any further questions? All right, is there any members of the public who would like to speak on this issue? Please step forward. State your name and let us know whether or not you live in the city.
My name is, am I on? I'm on. My name is Bracken Sharp. I do live in the city. I'm the Vice President of the Grants Pass Professional Firefighters, IF Local 3564. Tonight, I'm here in support of authorizing the city manager to apply for the AFG SAFER grant. With this potential grant, an additional 4 firefighters will be able to begin to move forward in a direction for adequate staffing for Grants Pass Fire Rescue. You are all on city council, you've been going through the discussions, you know that we are very understaffed. 2 people on a fire engine does not work. So with this, we are obviously in support. It'll get us closer to the levels that the National Fire Protection Association has set. As Chief presented there today, 14 firefighters for a first alarm fire, and we have 8. So we're getting there. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to keep it under my 3 minutes.
Thank you. Anyone else who wanted to speak on this, please step forward and state your name and whether or not you live in the city. Can you just touch the button at the bottom of the mic and make sure it's on? There you
Did
go.
that work?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer LeMay. I'm a resident in Grants Pass. I'm new to this process, so I wasn't sure if I could ask a question. I'm just curious if the level of the grant is the same as what was turned down last year, if I missed that.
So the process is that you're just offering comment. You can ask a question, and if one of
And
the
then maybe
counselors
somebody
later
will
wants
ask.
to take it up, they will.
Yeah, I'm curious, because if it was a higher level that they asked for last year or less, it'd be interesting to compare that, and hopefully they'll take that into account when they're writing this grant. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Hi, my name is David Dapper. I'm a citizen of Grants Pass. And I'm wondering also, I've seen where people get worked too ragged and they're under-supported and accidents happen and people get injured or worse. And I'm wondering what kind of liability the city would have for having an underfunded public safety department. In matter of lawsuits, insurance, I'm sure that, the insurance is, in machine shops is the biggest cost. Sometimes it's cheaper to do it right once.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak to this? All right, we'll close public comment and turn it back to council for discussion. Brian?
I move to approve the resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a grant application and, upon award, enter into an agreement with FEMA for the SAFER grant to increase staffing for 3 years.
Dwayne, thanks for the second. Any discussion on the motion? Val?
I just could always discuss something, but I think this is really important because, as they've said, we've had a lot of discussions about where our fire department is and the need for more staffing, and knowing financially how hard that is as a city to do. This would be a godsend. I was very disappointed when it didn't come last time, so I hope we have a shot this time.
Any other discussion? DJ?
So this is a great opportunity, sure, but now more than ever, we need to understand that, yes, we need to maintain current level of service for public safety, and yes, we do need to experience growth, but that's up to the constituents of this community to approve levies or what have you to increase our public safety force. I think now more than we have over the past 15, 20 years, we are facing a disaster with public safety, and we need the resources to match that current level of service. And by approving this, we're putting a goal in front of ourselves to say that we now have, if awarded, a new minimum staff for our fire department that we are going to have to anticipate paying for lest we add another disaster to our public safety. So I'll be in favor of this.
Anybody else? All right, let's see. Brian made the motion to authorize submitting the grant application. How do you vote?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. All right. Item B is regarding resolution to override the veto of adopting the strategic plan.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, members of the public. Subject to summary in front of you now is Council's consideration for an override of Mayor's veto to Resolution Number 23-7308, adopting the strategic plan. This supports Council goals of leadership by following the process outlined in the Charter, which I'll explain in the presentation, and providing the working basis for evaluating the achievements of City Council goals by providing direction to the budget also through strategic planning. Just a quick synopsis of the process. The City Charter does provide the Mayor the ability to veto council decisions. If the Mayor does not approve an ordinance, the Mayor must, within 3 days of receipt, return in writing the reasons for the veto. And at the first meeting afterwards, City Council would need to take and do a vote that would override the Mayor's veto, and it would need to be 3/4 of all members constituting the quorum, so it would require 6 council members tonight to overrule the veto. So resolution number 23-708 has been vetoed by the Mayor. And at this point right now, before I move on in the presentation, one of the things outlined in the Charter is that the City Recorder does read in full the Mayor's submittal in writing. So at this point, I'd like to have our City Recorder read the Mayor's veto.
On February 15th, 5 members of the City Council voted to retroactively remove the Mayor's input from the 2023 strategic plan. Their explanation that the Council needs to follow its rules defies logic. There is no rule that defines the strategic planning process. There is no rule outside of the Council's own handbook that requires the City to have a strategic plan. It has been the longstanding practice, a decade or more, of the City to include the Mayor in the strategic planning process, and I have personally participated in the last 3 years without objection from Council. The nascent motivation to retroactively remove the Mayor's input from the strategic plan isn't about protecting the process. Rather, it's a flagrant attempt to eliminate the goal establishing a low-barrier homeless shelter from the City's priority list. Because they don't like the way I voted, 5 members of this Council have rationalized that the Mayor's input doesn't matter. I believe it does. The Mayor is elected to represent the citizens, not the City Council. While the Mayor doesn't vote on each issue, the City Charter specifically defines the powers and duties of the office. The Mayor votes when there is a tie among the Council. The Mayor also approves and signs off on each ordinance and resolution passed by the Council, or conversely, the Charter gives the Mayor the power to not approve or de facto veto any resolution or ordinance passed by the Council. Following the veto by the Mayor, the issue returns to the Council for a second vote. A 3/4 or 6-member majority is required to overturn the Mayor's veto. I am not approving the 2023 strategic plan as adopted at the February 15th meeting. I'll cite 2 reasons. The Council's 5-3 decision to retroactively change the rules of the strategic planning process does not honor the rules as established and understood prior to and during the January strategic planning workshop. One of the mayor's duties is to protect the integrity of the process, and I believe this decision violates that threshold. 2, I believe the citizens expect their mayor to have a voice in establishing a vision for the city. They expect their mayor to hear their concerns and provide leadership in seeking solutions. The intertwined issues of affordable housing and homelessness are top concerns for our citizens. These are complex problems that need a myriad of solutions. Removing these issues from the priority list will not make them go away. The citizens are begging the council to take action in addressing these concerns, and I am using the mayor's veto to insist that the council acknowledge this and reconsider its priorities. Sincerely, Sarah Bristol, Mayor.
Thank you, Karen. So, as mentioned, in order to override the veto, 6 members of council must vote in favor of the resolution in front of you this evening. Absent a newly adopted strategic plan, staff will be operating under our current strategic plan. The call to action for this evening is there isn't really a cost associated with your decision, except for it would be reviewed if it does establish a strategic plan tonight. Council can approve the resolution overriding the veto. It does require 6 council members. If it does fail, then it would fail and the veto would stand. Or council could take no action, which would allow the veto to stand also. Your call to action date is today, March 1st. It is at council's discretion. There is a potential motion in front of you. And after this is concluded, there is, if you want a further discussion on strategic planning, it would need to be scheduled at another business meeting or workshop. And with that, I conclude my presentation and turn it over to you, Mayor.
Thanks, Aaron. Council, are there any questions? Dwayne? I think your mic might not be on.
Sorry. Can you go back a couple slides? Yeah, right there. Oh, you went too far. It says honoring the rules. Do you have these rules? Can you read them?
I don't have those rules in front of me, but I can, or I can come get them.
You can come get them and read them. This is the rules from the strategic plan.
All right, council wants me to read the rating procedure.
Yep.
Rating procedure is as follows. Each council member will receive 30 dots. Each objective action is limited to no more than 10 dots per council member. For example, council can pick their top 10 objectives and actions and apply 3 dots to each, or any other combination of dots per objective and action, as long as they do not exceed 10 per dots per objective action for an individual council member. Objectives and actions receiving 4 or more council votes will be considered for adoption in the strategic plan. Tabulate results, including a multiplying factor based on the number of councilors voting on the objectives and actions. Multiplier requires a 5 dot per councilor to be worth a multiplier of 1. Discuss results and recognize top 15 goals, objectives, and actions. Adopt a strategic plan and discuss changes for the workshop.
Thank you.
Other questions? Valerie, I'm just waiting for
Okay.
Aaron to get
Okay,
back to his spot
sorry.
here. There you go. Go ahead.
Okay, so because that was something that was brought up at the last meeting, is I did try to read some of the rules that were in the handbook. And at that point in time, it was noted that the handbook was not the charter. Well, I mean, the charter overrode the handbook. Is that correct?
Yes, the charter is like your constitution, and the handbook does provide some guidelines that were adopted either through ordinance or resolution that have been established by current and or previous councils when it comes to your rules and operations.
Thank you.
Dwayne?
Were these rules given to everybody before we voted?
They were in the strategic planning packet for council.
Does it say mayor on here?
No.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like I'm on trial here, so this is sort of odd.
Are there other questions? Brian?
Well, let's keep the trial thing going. Was Did anyone raise an issue with this before we voted and before we set the goals?
These questions seem to be something that should be asked of council, not of me, when you're having this discussion.
Are there other questions? DJ?
I can answer that. I raised objection 2 years ago and last year to the mayor's participation and control over the agenda. So yes, I did.
Dwayne?
I brought it up to Aaron before we voted. Obviously, I was pretty new, and I was like, how is the mayor voting when it's not a council, mayor is not a council, and this is a council's agenda? So I did.
Are there other questions for Aaron? All right, thanks, Aaron. You're dismissed. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this issue? Please step forward, state your name, and let us know whether or not you're a city resident.
Is it on? Okay. I'm Julie Hartford, and I'm from the city of Grants Pass. Last time when you were voting on this strategic plan, I know that Valerie called in from home, and I don't want to pick on you, Valerie. I like you a lot. I think you're smart. I think you care about the city of Grants Pass. You've been a guest in my home, and you are always welcome there. But one of the things you said was that there was a lot of dissension within the city council, and then you turned around and voted to discount the mayor's input to the strategic plan. And I think that it's not a good balance there, that you would take someone out of the process after they've already, in good faith, participated. Also, she spent days working on it, and it should have been, if you were going to vote her out of the process, you should have done it ahead of time, in my opinion. You asked also, the whole council asked for the public's input in this process, and several members of the public did, in good faith, go and make input toward that. And it seems like if you're going to discount voices of leaders that we elected through voting, that it seems like you would even more so discount the voices of the public. If you wanted to take her out of the process, it seems like you should have done that before she was part of the process. Councilmember Pell talked a lot about how the votes were decided on with an ear toward what other people were looking at too. And I think that that's a very good point that really wasn't discussed much more than his comments. You refer a lot to the charter, but for the past 10 years, the mayor's always been part of this process, and possibly even longer. I believe that you should really keep the mayor's input in this. It seems like maybe you chose to take her out of the process because you didn't like the way she voted, and I don't think that's a good look for Grants Pass. I do believe that each of you care about Grants Pass, but I think you also ought to think about how this impacts the citizens who have voted for her, and expect you all, including the mayor, to be our voices. Thank you. And I do have to leave. I won't be able to stay for the vote. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak? Please step forward and state your name. And I just want to give a reminder, we need to address our comments to the council as a whole and not specific individuals.
Hello, council, staff. My name is Ruth Daly, and I'm a citizen of Grants Pass. I'm here to support the mayor's veto of the strategic plan that was adopted at the last council meeting. The mayor's input is important and was appropriate for the city's strategic plan for 2023. The facilitation of a homeless shelter site, exploring an unhoused vehicle program, support and encouragement of the development of 225 units of housing per year commensurate with the incomes and size of Grants Pass households are all very important programs and do fit with the wishes of Grants Pass residents. And I urge you all to oppose the overturning of the mayor's veto. Thank you.
City resident Mike Pelfrey. You know, we as citizens that go to work every day, have to live our lives, we have to follow rules. And when we don't follow rules, meaning if it's not in writing and if it's not in the book, we are subject to being citations, what have you. So in my opinion, I think the council is doing exactly what we elected them to do, and that is represent the city of Grants Pass and the citizens of Grants Pass. The mayor, you know, someone's mentioned during the last city council meeting that maybe the mayor shouldn't, if the mayor's vote doesn't count, then maybe the mayor shouldn't get involved. Well, I think that's ridiculous. The mayor should attend these meetings, irregardless of whether or not the mayor has a say-so. The mayor is the leader of our town. She is a lobbyist, in my opinion. So her job as a mayor is to make her point of views during these sessions that you folks have. She's going to make her point of views known to you and what her desires are for the city of Grants Pass. But that's where it ends. It ends right there because that is exactly the way the charter is supposed to work. It's up to everyone to the left of the mayor to decide on what is the vision for this particular period of time for the city of Grants Pass. The mayor does in fact have a say-so. I said this the last time I spoke. Her say-so comes when there's a tie. And when that happens, the mayor does get to voice her opinion on whatever the subject is. But when we're talking about this particular issue, it is clear. It's absolutely clear. And I read what Councilman Junker stated about the rules. We just had our city manager read the rules, and nowhere in there does it say the word mayor. So again, I implore you to do what's right, do what we as citizens are having to do every day, and that is abide by rules. And if you do that, guess what? Everything will take care of itself. So the mayor is a very important person in our community, and I think she has a voice. But at the end of the day, it's up to the council to determine what her bullet points are and where they fit on that board where you're putting your dots. So again, stick to your guns, and hopefully one other person in this council will decide that what I just said is absolutely spot on. Thank you kindly.
Is this still going? Yeah. Holly Morton, county resident, but I just bought a home here in town, 10 blocks or so from here. The mayor is a facilitator, in my opinion. She's a facilitator for the council. But in my opinion, the council and the mayor have been off track for quite a long time. It's evidenced by what's happened to our beautiful city. I mean, it's a mess, and a lot of things need to change. You know, we've got to work on that, and I just feel that perhaps her facilitating should end there, and that the council should be in charge of what needs to happen to this city.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak? Please step forward and state your name and whether or not you live in the city.
Do I need to do anything here? Okay, my name is Teddy or Tedesco McLean, and I'm a resident of Grants Pass.
Can you just speak up a little?
Okay, I think we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. If you use the analogy of people being pulled out of a river, that's our homeless population. But if we go upriver, we need to find out why they're falling in the river. That's the bigger picture here. We have a homeless problem. We will all agree on this. They are living in our parks because of an injunction. If we don't address the problem up the river with a shelter, with affordable housing, with a navigation center that addresses the problems of our unhoused brethren because of their circumstances or because of genetics or because of whatever reason. They have mental health problems, they have drug and alcohol problems, they don't know how to access services. If we don't address that, it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what this city does. If they don't address the core issue, we're going to continue to have people living in the parks. And like that woman that died recently of exposure, we are going to have some of our homeless brethren die. And there are now statistics on that fact. So I urge you to step back and to let go of the rules. And from your heart and your soul and your conscience, deal what is morally right. And that is to support people who need the support that this council and this city and this nation need to give. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
Hi, Jennifer LeMay, Grants Pass resident. I'm really good at questions, so I'm just going to throw it out there real quick. Hindsight is difficult, so if the mayor did not have a vote, I'm curious as to how the priorities would have changed. Aside from that, I'm curious as to where the public input came into playing with the vote, because we were asked to fill a survey. I was diligent in sending that out to people in the community because I care a lot about these issues. I'm happy to be up here speaking. I'm also terrified, I'm sure, as people that are new to this process. I am looking at the agenda, and the final thing I'm looking at is E and F of council action is addressing homelessness. So how does it make sense to be looking at these resolutions that you have forth on these agendas if homelessness isn't even on our priority list? Thank you.
I'm Tina Hughes. I live in Grants Pass. So when you go to somebody's house and you play a game, you play by house rules. You don't change the rules midstream. Had the mayor's suggestions not been on there, would you still have voted against her votes? Changing the rules midstream is never a good option. If you don't want her opinion next year, then change it from this point out. Don't change it now because it's already been done. It's been done in the past and it's been done now. It's status quo. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a city resident, Raleigh Smith. First, I want to say I appreciate Mayor Bristol's note that we speak of the council as a whole. However, it's apparent that individually they're not working in unison. You asked us at the last meeting to state our case, and I'm going to say 95% were in favor of Mayor Bristol participating in the process. I would suggest perhaps that we have some hidden agendas. We have some people on the council that, are builders, own a lot of property. What is the incentive for them to attack the housing crisis? Do we buy tents or do we build houses? So I don't like going to the park and picking up syringes. I don't like having to, walk my dog and fall on tent stakes. Part of me wants to say, let's put them on you guys' porches, like when they bust them into the president and vice president's house. We have to do something. And if you're not going to work in unison with the community, we have a real problem. Thank you.
It's okay to line up a little bit if you need to. You all get to go home and we have to stay till the bitter end.
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Anderson. I live in the county and I own property in the city, so I'm kind of a hybrid here. And I go and I listen to the county commissioner say, well, you know, the homeless isn't our problem. And they come to council, well, we don't want to deal with it. Well, last time I looked, the city was in the county and the county is in the city. So I would hope that we could see more of a team effort on this, really. And the mayor is part of this team, was elected as part of this team. And a lot of people did come forward, and I can understand a lot of the reservations you have, but the ostrich technique does not work. Putting your head in the sand and pretending that this is going to go away is not going to happen. And whether it's designated as an emergency or not, it's an emergency. Designating it is not going to change that. It's not going to, I mean, not designating is not going to make it go away. It's still there. The emergency is there, whether you want to formalize it or not. And we have an opportunity to get some funding and try to mitigate the situation, to say, oh, we're going to solve the homeless population, the homeless situation. Let's try to mitigate it. Let's try to work with it. And let's try to get the people that we can off the street. But nothing happens without funding. Nothing happens without funding. And I appreciate everyone's effort here. You have a team of volunteers from this town who have stepped up and really been making an effort to try to coordinate things to have success in this area. But we need leadership that can function as a team in order to get that done. Everybody agrees something needs to be done about it. Can't agree on what needs to be done about it, but the concept that something needs to be done. Not keeping it on the agenda is not how it will not get resolved if it is not addressed. It's hard problems, really hard problems. They're social problems. They're deep in the community. But I hope you'll continue to try. And I think the mayor, I think the fact that she participated in the whole process and then after the fact was excluded is an incorrect thing to do. So I support that she did what she did and vetoed that because she wasn't listened to and I don't think we've been listened to. Thank you. Keep trying.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dodged and walked on your feet. Hi, I'm Tina Lambert, Grants Pass. I don't think I could have said it better than you, actually. But I'll just go ahead with a few comments. We as the constituents do not feel like we're being listened to. I don't know who you're representing, really. Ignoring the homeless population is not going to help our businesses, our tourism, our sense of safety when you want to walk your dog at the park, when you want to take your kids to the park. If you ignore it, it's only going to get worse. Hello. And here's another thought, Mr. Fraser. Those who do not participate in a solution are part of the problem. And I have to admire this mayor who went up in front of the commissioners who got slammed again on the front page of the newspaper today. Yeah, this town needs to start working together. Yeah, it's falling apart. No wonder why. Rocket science.
Hi, this right now seems to be more about the homeless than anything. And we spent our funding on a mental health drug addiction deal, which is needed, because that's the main problem. The main problem I see is there's a bunch of drug addicts and oftentimes sex offenders living in the park with no rules, and the police were not allowed to post their tents. Now, we don't have $1.5 million to pay someone to run Beverly Hills for these people, but for the sake of the people that want to use the tents, we can find a lateral move, a property such as a property across from the youth authority. And they could move their tents and stuff there, and they could be supervised. For there are some people, as there's a 50-some-year-old lady out at Tussin Park now that they've stolen everything she has. And she's not a drug addict, but the police can't supervise, 400,000 places all at once. But if we were to just compromise, do what we can do now, which doesn't include millions of dollars, but just take a piece of property that I understand requires a waiver because the youth authority school is there, but they're not going to break into the youth authority or the jail, I wouldn't think. This is a solution, not a problem, not a gripe, not a whine. Let's do this. Let's do one little thing. No one's going to get their whole pizza today, but if we don't do something now, we'll never have anything to build on when we do, if and when we do get funding to move forward. There will be no more risks than there is now. They'll be more safely supervised than they are right now in one given place. And they won't be taking baths in the kids' waterworks when the families try and go to the park. And there won't be needles all over the park, hopefully. Or, people grabbing women at knife point and pulling them in a van. Let's do something. Not everything. No Beverly Hills. But let's do something to build on. Because nothing never did anything.
Is there anybody else who wanted to speak on this issue? All right, we'll close public comment and turn it back to council for discussion. Valerie.
Wow, I'm not sure where exactly to begin because I know you can't make everybody happy and it doesn't matter what you do, somebody's going to be mad at you. One thing I would like to say is I think this has been misconstrued to be an issue of homelessness, and it is not. I can tell you that this council has supported, given money to the emergency shelter. We have given money to the weather shelter. We had $840,000 that we did give to On Track because they had a program that had operating costs included to help the homeless who were looking for a step up through drug treatment. And quite frankly, that's all the money that we had. So we don't have a lot of money right now to have a homeless shelter unless we go to the state, which is not going to not happen. We're going to make every effort that we possibly can to get money from the state to do something. But within our own budget, we don't have the money, which is about $1.5 million to operate. It is about money because strategic planning
Please refrain from outbursts.
Strategic planning leads to budgeting. And so if we put something on strategic planning, then we are saying that we are going to put it in our budget. And we don't have the money to put it in our budget. So that was what I was operating on when I chose to not put those particular things on it. I can tell you on the strategic plan, the number one of all the counselors was to explore the opportunity for the city to bolster mental health and drug addiction services for the unhoused. And last time I checked, unhoused meant homeless. So we did. That was our number one goal. It is on there. I can also tell you there are at least 6 other things on there for homelessness, to move forward with the homelessness. So to say that we don't recognize that homelessness is a problem in our community, that's like a slap in the face to me because it is very much a priority. But I also know that we can go through the strategic books and we can say, well, this is there, that's there. But I know, as having taught 11 years of government in our school system, that we live by a constitution, and that constitution is written to where there are powers. There are branches of the government. There's the legislative, there's the executive, and then there's the judicial. And each person has a role, and it is written in that constitution, and our constitution is right in front of me here. Section 1, Chapter 3, Form of Government, where powers are vested. Except as this charter provides otherwise, all powers of the city shall be vested in the council. Mayor's functions at council meetings. The mayor shall have a vote on all questions before the council resulting in a tie vote. The mayor shall have authority to preserve order, enforce the rules of the council, determine the order of business under the rules of the council. The mayor must sign all records of council decisions. The mayor serves as the political head of the council. Here, when you're talking about the council, it says, right down here, No action by the council shall have legal effect unless the motion for the action and vote by which it just takes place at a meeting that is open to the public. Okay, and then above that it says that a majority is 5 members. So if we're given the power, and all powers are vested in the council, and 5 of those council people vote on something, that's pretty much how it goes. You can throw out the rest of the handbook, but the Constitution says that's how it is. So if indeed we went with this, which the strategic plan that came up, we would be saying that 3 councilors and the mayor has more power than 5 councilors. And that's not the case. That is not the case by the book, by the Constitution. It doesn't matter. If we don't have a strategic plan, we are going to deal with the homeless situation. We are going to deal with whatever comes in front of us. If the state gives us money, of course we're going to spend it where we have to spend it, because that's where it has to be spent. And we know that. Those are the rules. But you also need to know that this has been an issue going on for the last 3 years. 2 city council presidents in the last 2 years have struggled with the fact that the mayor wants more power. She wants to set the agenda. She thinks it's her agenda. And so we have had turmoil behind the scenes. Do we show that to you? No, we don't show that to you. But it hasn't been an easy ride along the way. And so as we come to this issue, and we're just trying to stand up and say, you know something? 5 councilors is a majority. The charter gives us the power to the council. And we're just trying to write the rule book as the rule book, which is the Constitution, needs to be run. And my personal opinion, and that's what's wrong with our country right now, is because you've got executive branch making executive orders, shoving things down people's faces. You've got the, and I don't mean that against Sarah, but I'm just saying in general. And we also have the judicial that's stepping on the rules. So everything's kind of misconstrued, and we need to get back on track. And back on track means we follow the big rules, not the council administrative rules, because that's what those are, but the big book, which is the Constitution, which clearly lines out what the role is for each part of the government.
Very well said.
Dwayne.
I have like a page and a half to read, but I'm not going to read all of what I wrote. But, you know, I'm just, some of the things that really affect me is I had to find out about the veto on the Daily Courier. I would think that we would find out from the mayor first that she's going to veto before she's talked to the Daily Courier. And I know why she's talked to the Daily Courier, because obviously her husband works there. So it really bothers me that I have to get an email hours after I've already read it in the paper. And then there is rules. She said there's 2 things that gives her why she vetoed this. There was rules. The city manager read them. The second one is the input from people. And I know there's people here that are very passionate here about the homeless. And I would just say this. I spent Monday in Ben at a shelter, a navigation center, men's addiction treatment, driving around to the homeless people there. I went to the state properties out in the middle of nowhere in the federal, and this Kenny guy took me out there. So to tell me that I don't care, I think I care. But I also want to read this. This is on AllCare's website. And this is a poll that was done with citizens around here. And it says on number 17 here, it says, this is asking people what they thought was most important. And I know a lot of you think shelter is number 1. So, but I have to look at this too and think, well, there's other people out in our community. And the number 1 issue on here was provide mental illness, substance abuse counseling. That was the number 1 issue. You know where group shelters and homes was? Less than 1%. This is a poll that's done right here in Southern Oregon, Josephine County. So I know people here want a shelter, but there's other people in this community also. And I don't know how many people they polled on this. This is from AllCare. It's on their website. You can pull it up yourself and see what people wanted. Addiction and drug treatment's number 1, almost everywhere on there. And I think we've done that already. So for us to say we don't, one counselor called us unintelligent because we had an opinion different than the mayor, which I think is false. We have to look at all constituents and see what they say, not just the ones that show up to the meeting, because most people don't come here. You have to hopefully agree with that. Most people, if there's 35,000 people in the city, there's like, what, 20 out there right now? And most of you come time. And I really appreciate you coming because you're diligent and you have a passion, you have a whatever it is, the issue is. But I think we all care up here about something. But I just want to follow the rules that were laid out to me in the beginning of this thing and follow those rules. And not have someone that's going to tell us what they think should be because they have the veto power. And the second one, when we did give money to drug and addiction, like my poll I just read, they refused to sign it. So I think someone else has their own agenda versus the 5 of us that voted to do things. That's all I got to say.
Brian.
So normally I would be more than willing to take my gloves off and get into mudslinging on this topic, but I'm just really not in the mood tonight. And I don't think that there's the votes to overturn the veto. So let's just save everybody a bunch of time. Let's save staff time. Let's save these nice people time. Let's save us time and not do this whole political theater thing. I'm going to go ahead, and I don't believe in this motion, but I'm just throwing it out so we can move on because I don't think it has the votes. But I'm going to go ahead and just make the motion to override the veto, resolution number 23-7308, adopting the strategic plan so we can get on with our lives.
Seconded by Dwayne. Discussion on the motion. Rob, then Joel.
Thanks, Brian. You know, I'm going to have to say that with all the people that are saying to follow the rules, you know, I'm going to agree with you. There's no doubt. And I would also say that following the rules and having the mayor participating are not mutually exclusive. And the reason I say that is because council created, council, we hear those words, council, the Constitution, council, all powers vested in the council. Council created the process that included the mayor. How simple is that, right? And I don't think anyone wants to address that, but that's the reality. Now, I sent out an email to my fellow councilors thinking that, you know, it would probably be 5-3 tonight and that someone might want to lobby me or whatever to override the veto. I invited them to do it. I stated my thinking on it. No one actually responded. I don't know if any of them read it, so I'm going to read it tonight. I would have preferred not to, and I'm sorry, Brian, it's going to be another little bit of a wait to vote. But since no one responded, I'm going to give them one more chance to try to respond to the issues as I see it. And I also did admonish people in the beginning, please, because this matter is on the upcoming agenda, I would against replying all to this email that I sent out to the council. Fellow councilors, for many years, the City Council has used the strategic planning process, formerly called goal setting, as its chosen tool to create a work plan. The strategic planning process has always been a tool created and or approved by council for council. Going back to the council's illegal multi-day retreats at the Oregon coast, followed by years of the same in Shady Cove, in parentheses, illegal because they were outside the jurisdiction, which made the attendance by the public unfeasible. The goal setting was a pleasant multi-day getaway. Some councilors brought their families. That changed in 2008 when a former councilor, in parentheses, who I had never met, walked into my store one day, brought it to my attention, and asked for help. I was not yet on council, but apparently had a reputation as being something of a government watchdog. To facilitate potential public participation, because at the time the public was not offered any opportunity for direct input, he wanted the venue changed and didn't know how to accomplish that. He had gained no traction trying to change the location despite making repeated attempts working within the local system. I suggested he consult with the Secretary of State, and I helped him do so. The Secretary of State's office informed the city they were breaking the law and needed to hold the goal setting within the city limits. So for probably the first time ever in 2009, when I was on the council, goal setting was held within the city limits. It was gratifying to have played a role in offering the public greater transparency and understanding of our city government processes. The most recent strategic planning session format was offered and created by the current city manager several years ago and chosen by council to be its preferred tool to create the work plan. Several councilors have given Aaron high praise for the creation of this format, which, as you all know, has historically included reports from staff and city committees and commissions, public input, input from the councilors and the mayor, and after receiving input, the council-chosen process for curating and prioritizing all the input has historically been to have 9 co-equal parties vote to express their preferences, parentheses, co-equal, because every year through 2022, council has given the opinions of the 8 councilors and the mayor equal consideration and weight. Those final preferences have always become the annual strategic plan. Now this year, after the annual process had been completed in the same fashion as in all years through 2022, 5 councilors decided they no longer deemed our heretofore mutually agreed upon process as worthy. They chose without prior public discussion to abandon the final results from this year's process and quite obviously arrived at the February 15th council meeting with a predetermined collective mindset on the agenda item of adopting this year's strategic plan. In discussion at that council meeting, several councilors seemed to have confused the simple adoption of this year's completed strategic plan with an opportunity to voice displeasure over a specific item that had already made it through the council's chosen method for approval, or displeasure with the mayor's performance, personality, and style. From a rational perspective, refusal by 5 councilors to accept the responsibility of following through and codifying the planning process using methodology previously accepted and consistently employed by council is an affront to all who participated in that collaborative 2.5-day process, as well as the taxpayers who foot the bill for the time that went into it. It would be my hope that my fellow council members would be honorable and employ our tool this year in a manner consistent with the way we have used it for the last decade. Moving forward in future years, if council members want to make wholesale changes or minor tweaks to our council-chosen methodologies, I believe that this is a discussion worth having. Until then, the strategic plan that came out of our 2023 session should be codified and implemented as presented. And this is why I read this tonight. If there are any of the 5 who find the simple and very consistent logic contained in this writing to be reasonable and compelling, I would hope that you would be of sufficient character to publicly agree and act accordingly by requesting the plan as it came out of our strategic planning session to be adopted. If based on the historical and consistent use of council's chosen tool for creating its strategic plan, any of the 5 would like to publicly on the dais or privately attempt to influence my opinion or before the veto override vote, I welcome your call or email. So this process that we've done for 10 years is what council created, council chose, council, and when we keep using the word council, that is actually how the rules were. So the mayor participating is not mutually exclusive from council creating its own process that we've used for a decade. And actually further back than that, in 2009, 13 years ago, the mayor also was a part of that process. For some reason this year, I'd like to hear why there was an urgent need after this process was created, an urgent need to within 2 weeks change the council chosen process.
Joel.
Thank you. Well, there's a part of me that agrees with Brian, and however this vote goes forward a year from now. The other thing is, you got a council up here that is very diverse, which is great. And you got conflicts, which are great, and they're in the open. So that's not a bad thing. I'm just going to try to deal with facts. I can answer a couple of Rob's questions. Fact number 1, the mayor did participate. The mayor did put the dots up. Everybody knows what they are. You know what they are. So the mayor, it's not like the mayor didn't participate. Now, whether she should have or not, it's kind of a moot point at this point in time, because she did. And we know what that is, okay? That's not a bad thing. That's what happened. So she did vote. She put her dots up there. And everybody knows, and everybody heard what she did, okay? So that's fact number 1. Fact number 2, the council then approves the strategic plan. The council does, because they're the ones that set policy. And when it came back to the council in past years has just rubber stamped what came out of this process. This year, the council didn't rubber stamp it. They agreed with some things, they disagreed with other things. I agree with Rob that the strategic plan is basically a budgeting tool for our city monies. And I got to tell you, there was some conversation at that time that it's not going to come to pass, I don't think, at this point in time, because we're going to have money from the state rather than, but at that time, there were some people that were wanting to request up to $2 million, either, I don't know, from the general fund or urban renewal fund or some other funds for those two issues. And then you get a state grant on top of that, what do you do? And then you can't fund your fire and your police. And your other things. So, to me, as a council member setting policy, knowing that the state's going to be funding things, knowing that we got other needs as well that are, well, like with this public safety, probably for the homeless and the non-homeless, very important. Plus things like the swimming pool, the water treatment plant, those kind of things. For our funding mechanism coming out of the strategic plan, we don't program the grants from the state, okay? Those are going to be coming, but we don't program those through strategic planning. What we program through strategic planning is how do you spend the general fund, how do you spend urban renewal dollars, how do you spend your taxpayer dollars that you pay the city. And so the city council just simply exercised its experience. The mayor participated. That doesn't mean maybe we don't change the process next year, but she did participate. And the council at that time didn't rubber stamp it. And I didn't because of some financial concerns I had that I don't think were in the benefit of the future of the city. So, and it's good to have these conflicts in the open. And I'm glad we do because that means we have a diverse group up here.
Dwayne?
I just wanted to address Rob. I didn't reply to Rob, but it wasn't very long, and I just sent him the rules. So I did email you, Rob, and he told me he could understand why I felt that way, so I'll give him that. But there was an email recently sent out by the mayor to somebody, and it tells this lady, Carol, and it says, tell us about her job. She actually explained her job to this lady, and it says the mayor, it talks about, the mayor tells, the lady, it says, I facilitate meetings, vote only if there's a tie. The mayor also states the city council establishes policy, not the mayor. I feel the mayor needs to follow. So this is telling, the mayor knows what her rules are because she told this lady Carol this. And I just want to let everybody know that later tonight, we're going to be voting on emergency declaration or whatever to get funds. So I think the whole homeless, people worried about the homeless thing being on the strategic plan, I think is a moot point because I'm pretty sure it's going to pass and we're going to ask for funds from the state. So I don't see why that's people's concerns. I mean, I'm going to vote for it. I'll just go ahead and tell you now. I'm going to vote for it and get the funds, and then we're going to sit there and do what we're doing right now and have another discussion of what's best for the city. But right now, we have no funds to put a shelter, urban campground, or whatever we decide to do, or whatever the thing is. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you ahead of time, I'm going to go ahead and vote for the thing. I already spoke to very people my questions. So I do a lot of homework before I get here. So I want the funds, and then I guess we'll argue and figure out what we're going to do with them. So,
Is there further discussion? All right, not seeing any. Brian, you made the motion to override the veto. How do you vote?
No.
Valerie?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
No.
Vanessa?
No.
Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion fails 5-3 because it requires a 2/3 vote, which is 6 of the, or it's actually a 3/4 vote, 6 of the 8. All right. Again, the city manager said earlier, if anyone wants to bring bring up the strategic plan, it will be at another meeting. Otherwise, he will use last year's plan going forward. Next up, we have a couple of items that got added late, so look at your supplementary packet here. Actually, first we have one that's still on the original agenda, but item C, regarding a grant. DJ.
I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and deliberation.
Okay. DJ's stepping down because he's recusing himself for a conflict of interest. No, apparently he just has to declare that he has a conflict, not state the reason.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry,
Mark.
Excuse me, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, and the public. A summary in relation to the council goals behind me. Tonight we're requesting approval of a resolution authorizing the payment for a public infrastructure grant up to $620,000 to AllCare Community Foundation for a property located at 220 Glencrest Way in accordance with the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, request for proposal for public infrastructure for affordable housing guidelines. The relationship to council goals is that it encourages economic opportunities. By way of background, you recall last June, the City Council authorized approximately $1.6 million of the $9.3 million of ARPA funds to incentivize the development of affordable housing through public and private partnerships where the city contributes to the ARPA funds for the design and/or extension of a public infrastructure. To this end, staff released a request for proposal back in September, and with a deadline for proposals to be received by November 30th. Accordingly, 2 proposals were received to staff, one from the AllCare Community Foundation and the other from Home Bridging. A review committee made up of city staff, including members of the Community Development Department, Public Works, and a representative from the Urban Area Planning Commission and Housing Advisory Committee reviewed these applications. Tonight before you is a recommendation for AllCare Community Foundation's project called Glencrest Cottages. This will be proposed new construction of 15 dwelling units located at 220 Glencrest Way. This is just outside the city limits, but within the city's urban growth boundary. It's approximately a 2-acre vacant lot. AllCare Community Foundation intends to develop permanent affordable housing targeted to military veterans at 80% AMI. In their proposal, they estimated a total development cost of approximately $3.25 million. And there is a correction on the initial background report. It had listed $2.8 million. I apologize. The figure is $3.25 million. AllCare has indicated that they've already committed a land donation for the site and up to $400,000. The initial contractor's bid, according to their proposal, will be bidding on water and sewer line extensions for approximately $562,000. The ARPA request is for $620,000. This includes a contingency of 10% due to any unforeseen construction cost estimates. This is the preliminary site plan for the project. It includes 12 units. However, AllCare has, just as early as Monday, indicated that they intend to develop the site to 15 units. For orientation, this would be, I believe, Clover Lawn, and this is Glencrest Way. The proposal includes basically 15 individual housing units or dwelling units, approximately ranging from 600 square feet to 1,000 square feet. Again, this is preliminary. We intend that this site plan will be eventually developed to 15 dwelling units. This is a better aerial of the project site. In red is the project site, approximately 2 acres. In blue is the proposed extension of the water and sewer line. This is Overland Drive and it will extend through to Glencrest. There is a subsequent developer that will develop this portion of the water line, and then AllCare will come in and develop the rest. ARPA funds will be utilized to design and build these water and sewer connections. And potentially with these installation of water and sewer, there's potential growth within these areas, particularly north and south. The call to action and the next steps, there is a balance in the RFP right now, assuming that AllCare Community Foundation's request of $620,000 is approved. Staff will go ahead and re-release a second round of ARPA funds for approximately $995,000. As far as cost implication, as I stated before, there is an ARPA budget of $1.6 million, and with the recommendation of $620,000 to AllCare Foundation, there will be again a balance left for the second round. A call to action date: ARPA funds shall be committed accordingly by December 24th, and the funds will need to be spent by December 26th, or excuse me, by December 2024, and the funds spent by December of 2026. Hence, the recommendation is to move forward with an ARPA funding agreement up to $620,000 to AllCare Community Foundation for public infrastructure for affordable housing, and the alternatives are listed below. That concludes staff's presentation. I believe Jed Keller is here from AllCare Community Foundation as well to answer additional questions, but I'm happy to answer questions as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Valerie has a question.
I do have a question. If you go back to slide 6, where you had the site in red, and then you have where the improvements will be for water and sewer, the black. Then you mentioned that between the two, there's a developer who will be paying for that. Are they going to pay for it at the time that it goes, that the AllCare Foundation does, so that it's all contiguous and ready to go?
That's our understanding in terms of our initial discussions with AllCare.
Okay.
Correct.
That's what I was wondering, because otherwise it was just like,
right.
it looks like a big hole in the middle, and will they be able to do their project if it's not all contiguous? That was my concern, is that the other person would have to do it at the same time in order to make theirs work. Am I correct in assuming that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, with the approval tonight, we'll move forward with negotiations and come up with a performance schedule.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mark? All right. Jed, did you have something you were going to tell us, or just here for questions?
Just here for questions. It is a proposal for veterans housing. We're in the process of requesting the balance of the funds from OHCS through a veterans project. Our grant writer and supporter is a disabled veteran that was originally from Grants Pass that we got introduced to through the city and through Vanessa Auger. So we're already in contact with the Veterans Administration, Easter Seals, Options, the various people that deal with veterans here in the community.
Other questions? Joel?
Great project. So thank you for coming forth with it. Care management. And you talked about the other nonprofits. I know, like over in Bend, when we went on the tour of what they did over there, they had care management on site. Is that going to be needed, or is that something that's in the works, or what?
So we
start to be determined.
Yes. So we start off with dealing with Josephine County Housing Authority. They're typically the people that contact the veterans. They work through the system. They're basically the landlord of it. There is there is an income restriction or how much we can charge, and that part of it. Initially, there's I think about 32 services providers here in Grants Pass. We will direct them where they need services. We would direct them out to that. The follow-up to this is that the OHCS also has a support plan that goes with it. So once we get the construction, then we can go back to OHCS for a services support grant, and that grant is a 3-year grant that is renewable. So that
And
allows
that's
us to
that.
provide the services that would go around that.
So instead of using an acronym, could you give us the words that go with OHCS?
Oregon Housing and Community Services.
Yeah.
It's a state grant, it's a
Okay.
state funded.
And it's through the Oregon Housing Authority, correct?
The Oregon Housing, Oregon Housing and Community Services is the state function that
Right.
disperses money.
Right, good for you. Even better for us.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, thanks for being here tonight, Jed.
Thank you.
This item is open for public comment. If anybody is here to comment on this item, please stand up, state your name, and let us know whether or not you live in the city.
I just have a few comments. I'm Judy Ano with Grants Pass, and it's workforce I don't see any reason not to go with it, but if I were voting. It's workforce affordable. They're smaller homes. It supports veterans. The project owner, AllCare Foundation, as well as our grant writer, Jed, and the project manager, Doug, all have a successful track record working with each other and also working in our community, and I really appreciate them coming forward. So I hope you'll support them.
Holly Morton, City and County. Anything we can do for our veterans, we should do. I think this is a great project. I'm delighted we're engaging in it, and I think we should move forward as fast as possible on it.
Is there anybody else who wanted to speak? All right, we'll close public comment, turn it over to Council, Dwayne, and then Val.
So I think two people need to make sure they recuse themselves because they've taken political contributions from AllCare Foundation, so I'll leave that up to them. But I'm going to support this. Obviously, as a veteran of 21 years, I don't see why anyone would be against this. This will help the water lines can connect a loop in there. So I don't see why anybody would be against this. I feel everybody should support this. Thank you.
Val.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to see our ARPA money. This is one of the things that when we got the ARPA money, we said we needed to bring in infrastructure, and hopefully as that big infrastructure loop gets built, there'll be other housing that comes along with it. This is a great, I know we have a lot of homeless veterans and a lot of people that need this, so I'm going to move to approve the resolution awarding AllCare Community Foundation funding from ARPA for an affordable housing grant up to $620,000 for public infrastructure for affordable housing. This approval will include an expiration date of 18 months from the date of adoption of this resolution.
So Rick with the second. Any discussion on the motion? Vanessa.
I think this project is especially exciting, and there are a couple of additional points that I think really are worth mentioning. The contribution this evening will leverage services for up to 197 acres. So not only are we allocating this money towards an affordable housing project, we're also opening up the services for the area for underdeveloped land. This project has become possible because the land is donated from a local community member. The development of the infrastructure and the landscaping, both will be fire-wise. And I did read in the packet that AllCare plans to have several open houses for the project to help developers come into the discussion and learn for future development of out-of-the-box building styles. So huge kudos to everyone involved. This is a great project.
Rick?
I'm also supportive of this tonight, and one thing I'm excited to see is cottage development. I feel that can provide a more affordable housing. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm not sure if these are hands. Are you just ready to vote? Is that Brian and then Rob? There is a motion. Val made the motion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well then, I just wanted to say that the one piece that hasn't been mentioned that I think would be nice to mention is the people that actually donated the land for this project, which is a very awesome thing to do. Tommy and Malcolm Drake donated the property for this project, so I just wanted to make that known. Thank you.
Rob.
Yeah, a lot of overlap with what Vanessa said. But to me, this is one of the most exciting parts of this project is, I know that 2 years ago, I think, Brian and I were talking about how the public and builders need to see examples of tiny homes and ADUs, maybe on a piece of city land or something, because the public generally doesn't know about these things. So the fact that they plan on basically having this be a real, using this as an educational tool for not just builders, because you would think that builders would be up on it, but for the general public to be able to see what an ADU looks like, the rezoning aspect, teaching presumably other developers how to go through that process. I mean, this has just so many potential positives that are so much bigger than just building a few homes. You could build a few homes for less money, but this is a really revolutionary step, I would hope, to our housing issues. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Vanessa?
It is worth noting that if we do decide to allocate the funds tonight, that I think we could chalk this up as city-county working together on this project, as we both would have donated ARPA funds to it. So give ourselves a pat on the back for that one.
All right, any further discussion? Dwayne?
When will this be brought into the city limits after it's done? Does anybody know?
It would be brought in at the same time as the rezoning.
Okay.
Anything further? Okay, Val made the motion to move forward with this plan, and Val, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. All right. Next up, now we're moving on to the agenda that's on the supplemental packet here. So we have item D was regarding feral cats at Baker Park, and our city attorney is coming up to...
Go to that one or this one? Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's just, yeah, we have a presentation, and then I'll let you know when it's time.
Evening, Mayor Council. So this presentation is about the feral cats issue in Baker Park that was brought up at the last council business meeting. And so you've all received a memo on this issue outlining kind of the background of how we got here and outlining some legal considerations and some discussion points and potential actions to take. But for the benefit of the public, we'll go through that background and these issues. So the structures that are at issue here were placed in Baker Park and were used to shelter and feed feral cats. The structures were removed at the request of a city councilor, and as a result of that removal, the city manager instructed the community development director, who instructed the park superintendent to remove those materials from the park. As a result, a concerned citizen contacted the administration to have the structures put back up immediately. They claimed that they were doing trap, neuter, and release, and that program was taking place and that the shelters were being used to further that purpose. Staff was told by the citizen that a written agreement had existed with the city to perform these services and to provide shelter and food to feral cats. Staff encouraged this citizen to come to a council meeting to voice her concerns. And before that council meeting took place, this citizen contacted Representative Morgan, who helped facilitate the setting of a meeting with the Rogue Valley Humane Society, the Josephine County Animal Shelter, Josephine County Spay and Neuter, and one other group that escapes me. So we had that meeting, the city manager and I, on January 27th to determine a path to move forward. In that meeting, staff expressed some of the legal and practical concerns, noted that a program such as this one would be at council's prerogative and would likely need some form of a formal agreement with an organized group to insulate the city from potential liability. We asked again if there was a written agreement, It turns out there wasn't a written agreement. However, Josephine County Spay and Neuter represented that there was a verbal agreement with the Parks Department some 18 years ago. And so the staff suggested, again, that a formal proposal be put together by the organizations for council consideration. And that was what happened largely last week. You had a lot of public comment on the issue. So the issues as they are, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to go through this, and I think it's fine to lay it out. So there are a couple of...
Don't pay any attention to the man behind the green screen.
You really laid it out there, Augustus, but...
Hey, I didn't bang the table or anything. I was... Whew.
All right, order in the...
In any case...
Calm down.
Yeah. So there's a number of issues that need to be considered when we're talking about an issue like this. This is not an issue that is unique to Josephine County or Grants Pass. This is an issue that is going on all over the country, and there's various jurisdictions that have different ways of dealing with it. But there's common threads for what a city should possibly be looking for and considering when it comes to initiating a program and maintaining it over the long term. First, that's ownership. And the reason that this is important is because ownership ultimately determines liability and shifts in liability, right? So if there's an entity that's in control or the keeper of these feral cats, that's ultimately the owner's or keeper's responsibility. So what we have kind of is a unique circumstance where public property would be used to shelter and feed feral cats, which are, for all intents and purposes, wild animals. The second thing to consider is tort liability. So there's a lot of uncertainty in Oregon state law. There's one jurisdiction in the state that I've been able to identify that has a municipal code regarding feral cats. That's Ontario, Oregon. And they lay out, they have a set of laws that deal with who are the sponsors, who are the people who are going into the parks and taking care of these cats. It's a pretty defined system. There's examples in other jurisdictions, again, relating to owner and ownership, and there's also examples in common law as to tort liability for wild animals, which is known as strict liability. Strict liability just means whoever's the owner and keeper of a wild animal that causes property damage or damage to a person is liable per se. They're strictly liable. The only issue is how much damage was caused. And so it really gets down to the question of the ultimate responsibility for damage to people and property. Certainly, I'm assuming that it would be the city council who does not want to have this sort of liability, and in my capacity of the city attorney, I'm charged with thinking of these things for the betterment of the organization. So finally, there are also practical concerns to consider. Now, these are a lot of neighbor-to-neighbor interactions that will inevitably come to the city's attention at times. That's nuisances, that's cat scat, diseases, interactions with other domesticated animals. Now, feral cats have an innate nature to run away from humans. Right? They are driven by a survival instinct. That doesn't mean, however, that they're not going to interact with other domesticated animals. That doesn't mean that they're going to encroach into neighbors' properties. That doesn't mean that they're not going to go where they're not supposed to go. So because feral cats are considered, and this is not me or my personal view, they are considered pests and they are considered wild animals. That is something that the city is going to have to consider in terms of who's going to be responsible for that. In our meeting on January 27th, Josephine County Animal Control indicated that they will not respond to any calls regarding feral cats. So that role would have to fall to city personnel, police, in responding to these nuisances. So these are just the things for council to be aware of and consider when deciding how they want to move forward with this. So another couple potential issues is our municipal code, 646060 and 646100. 646060 says it's unlawful any person to scatter refuse, debris, or waste, or to place upon or leave upon the lawns or elsewhere in such parks any materials which tend to damage the plant growth therein, or which detract from the natural beauty of such parks. The second one is livestock and animals in the park. It's unlawful for any person to permit livestock or animals of any kind or character to run at large or trespass upon land located within the boundaries of such parks. Another consideration for council to be aware of. Now, your call to action is at your discretion. The date is at your discretion. The alternatives behind me were listed in the memo, and I'll turn this over to the mayor and council for questions.
Thanks, Augustus. Council, do you have questions? Rick?
Thank you, Augustus. In the past 10 years, this has been before the city council before, and we basically just said, ignore it. So, in the presentation, you said here there is some concern there. I don't know, is there a way to write a document where the people attending the feral cats take 100% liability and we don't have to respond?
I do think that there's a way to write that in. I do think that there's a way to do a formal agreement. I think really the trepidation only came from the fact that this was an alleged agreement between a parks official from 18 years ago, a parks official who, if true, is supposed to be engaged in making policy of this type. Not having a formal written agreement from a group that is versed in these issues and able to respond to these issues appropriately is a point for exposure.
Thank you.
Valerie, then Joel?
Yeah, I just want to add, actually, there is some history behind it, and there are people who were aware of the history who were past parks people. It did come about, Carl Raskins, who is a community member, and at the time, Martin Stiebold was the parks director at the time that it was agreed upon to have it happen. So it probably, I'm sure enough, was not written down, and I totally understand that, but that is where it started. And I think that was 18 years ago, and I'm just kind of curious, up to this point, how many complaints there have been logged, other than the complaint by a counselor. That's my question.
I'm not aware of any. That's not typically something that's, I think, within my purview. But this only recently came to my attention right before strategic planning.
Joel, then Rob?
This reminds me of one of our really valued employees that took in a lot of cats and spayed them and kept them. But spaying is a very important part. Costs money or the requirement of a vet, and I know before the county was talking about a mobile spaying unit, and I don't know if we didn't go through with that. The other thing is cats kill more birds than anything else in the United States. And Riverside Park is a great place for birds. And I mean, you got stuff like mountain quail that are on the decline. You got other birds, and there's a lot of feral cats in Grants Pass. A couple of them showed, well, you don't need to, probably all of us have fed or tried to take care of a feral cat at some point in time. Without the spaying program and feeding cats in a place where it's an important habitat for birds, I would think that would be a problem. Is spaying going to be part of our requirement here, or and then how do we handle the bird issue?
That's a good question. In my interactions with this concerned citizen, Josephine County Spay and Neuter, Rogue Valley Humane Society, it was not clear that active TNR was taking place. That doesn't mean that it wasn't, but it was not clear to me nor was it clear to the city manager that that was what this whole issue was about. Really, when it came down to the brass tacks of it, it seemed as though the primary issue was structures and for cats to be sheltered and a place for them to be fed. In fact, in our meeting with the Rogue Valley Humane Society and all those groups on the 27th, there was mention that they were having a difficult time finding veterinarians to perform these spay and neuter programs. So that was taken by me that the real driving force behind this was actually to provide the shelter and a place for the cats to be fed as the primary driving fact. Not saying that TNR wasn't taking place. I don't know that. But neither does the council. There's no metric for them to know how many cats have been spayed and neutered over the last 18 years that this agreement allegedly took place. And so when we got this issue, when staff got this issue, we were doing our best to try to see if we could facilitate a way forward to coming to some sort of agreement. But it has been pretty clear that the main issue seems to be the structures in the park to shelter and feed the cats.
Rob?
To help me get a better picture, what size are these shelters? What do they look like?
So they're not terribly large. They could be moved. They're maybe, they're like interconnected like this,
Okay.
about this big. They're easily moved.
And how many of them were there?
I'm sorry?
How many were there?
I'm not sure how many there were.
Okay. So you mentioned that it didn't appear as if there had been any complaints, I guess, from the public, and maybe there's a reason to keep city councilor's name, hidden. Maybe there isn't. But do we have any idea why this councilor, unless they want to identify themselves, why this councilor complained? Like, what was the issue? What's the problem?
Hold on just a second, before that question gets answered. Oh no, I guess I took that out. So I wouldn't disclose any of your names about complaining, period, because I have a duty of loyalty to you as my clients as part of the city organization. So that's the reason that I didn't disclose the counselor to the citizen. I will continue to do that in the future because that's my ethical duty to do so. I'm, again, not privy to any sorts of complaints. It's the first I've heard of it. It was in January. But it was, for all intents and purposes, an issue that would have been pretty run-of-the-mill. My understanding was that it was a citizen complaint to a counselor related to the city manager, and the city manager related down his chain of command to the parks, to the community development director and the park superintendent to have them removed. That's really as far, that's really as much as, I know as much as you do in certain aspects.
So I guess to summarize, if the council takes some kind of action to limit this or prohibit this completely, we don't even know what problem we'd be solving. We would just be bringing one of our ordinances into compliance, but we don't know what problem we would be solving, if any.
I think that's fair to say.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Okay. We're going to open this up for public comment, so please let us know your name and whether or not you live in the city.
Okay, is this on?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Lisa Raskin. I am part of JOCO Spay and Neuter. My father was the late Carl Raskin. We have been doing this for 18 years. We have spayed and neutered over 16,000 animals. We have spayed and neutered, we've trapped, spayed, neutered, and released the cats that are down at Baker Park. There's not a cat down there that we have not been able to trap and get fixed. They've also gotten the rabies shots. This is all on JOCO's dime. We've never required or requested any money or any funding from the city for this. The shelters are actually the little storage tubs. You know, the ones, and what we do is we flip them over, we cut a hole out, we flip them over, we put bedding inside. They're easily movable. There's no weight to them at all. We don't have any structures down there. All we have are bowls or we use paper plates. And as I said at the last meeting when I was here, we take out of the park everything that we bring in to feed the cats, canned cat food. We bring all those empty cans out with us. We don't leave a mess. We don't leave trash there. These cats will run from you. In order to get scratched or harmed by a cat, you would have to literally corner that cat. These cats are not a problem. The problem is what's happening in Baker Park from humans. You've got hypodermic needles, you've got human waste on the ground, you've got trash all over. These cats will hide up in the blackberry bushes. They're not causing any issues whatsoever. You wouldn't even know they're there if you're not looking for them up in the blackberry bushes. They come down to eat, get some water, they go back into their hiding places. We used to have the shelters for them, but the city took them away. So all we're asking is to allow us to continue to provide a shelter for these cats. It's not anything stationary, it's nothing heavy, it's not causing any damage to any park property. So, yes.
So are you willing to provide documentation of your spaying?
Yes, we are.
Hang
We
on just a
have
second. Hey,
documentation.
wait, please. Council, do you want to entertain questions? This is really public comment, so it was just 3 minutes.
I'm more than happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
It's really up to the council. Council, do you want the opportunity to ask questions?
I mean, we've already decided that in our council procedures, like 2-3 years ago, that we can interact with.
That's why I'm asking you, but you don't just get to interact, without, okay. Joel, go ahead and ask your question, Joel.
Oh, she already answered it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Valerie?
How long has the same group of people have been going down, am I correct, since 2018, or obviously it changes?
There have been several people over the years, some people move away, some have passed away, but it's been mainly JOCO group.
Okay.
Myself included in that. I would be disappointing my father's memory if I didn't help out. But we do, there's a core group of us that come down each day, every day of the week, and we feed and water the cats and make sure that they're doing okay, and we check on them and we document who we see. And
Okay. I was just going to say, in this particular, one of the memos we got, they said there was approximately 14 that you have. I'm assuming if they were not spayed or neutered, that probably that population would be much larger.
yes, actually, we have less than 14. We have noticed several of our cats are now missing. We were informed by a couple of people that they had witnessed one of the feral cats being attacked by a pit bull from somebody living down there in the park. The woman actually set the dog on the cats. So, and we do have, we have liability insurance. We are willing to cover any insurance coverage in case something should happen. We will put this on our insurance with JOCO to make sure that it's covered and that it's no bearing on the city. But we do go down there regularly, and if we do see a new cat show up, because people do dump cats off down there, we trap that cat and we get it spayed and neutered. We have several veterinary offices that we work with to where we can get our cats in, the feral cats, and get them spayed, neutered fairly quickly. And then they heal, and then we release them back into the park.
DJ, then Dwayne?
Yeah, just very quickly. Why does this need to be done on public land?
That's where the cats were dumped.
Dwayne?
Thinking I was going to answer this question, but I'm just going to let you know that I'm the counselor because that was brought up to me, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it. I don't care if people know it's me, but someone brought it up to me that the cat, because there's dogs down there too, and just like you said, there's dogs eating the cat food and getting in all the stuff down there. So I went and checked it out and brought it to the city manager, like, what's the rule on this? And so, maybe I'm the bad guy, but that's my job, is to ask questions. When people ask me, hey, what's up with this? So, because we have another cat problem up at the Sante property up north too. So somebody brought that up to me, and I was like, what am I, become the cat counselor or something? I'm not really into, I got dogs, so.
Well, normally what we do is, I know I do this, and I know my Aunt Linda Milner does this also, is we will actually sit there and watch the cats come down and eat. So the likelihood of dogs getting into the cat food is...
Well, I actually seen the dogs eating the cat food, so I'm not crazy.
Okay.
But.
It does happen from time to time, but
I
on
don't
the
really like the
whole,
dogs
we
down there
usually
either,
sit
so-
there and watch the cats for a while because we're worried about dogs running loose in the park.
I agree with you.
So, okay.
Can't stand
Are
on the
there
lawn.
other questions? All right, thanks, Lisa.
All right.
Oh, Valerie has another. Oh, okay, well, we're still in public comment, so
Okay.
I think, thank you. Is there
Thank
anyone
you.
else who was here to speak on this issue? All right, please let us know your name and whether or not you live in the city.
It's my day today. Jennifer LeMay, Grants Pass citizen. Anybody that's been to Hawaii knows they have a huge feral cat population. So I just Googled Hawaii Municipal Code feral cats. So, oh, is she gone? I was going to say, you might want to look that up for just some legal standing on what they say about feral cats. It's a great document. It's HB 2593.
Is there anybody else?
My name is Bonnie Rhodes, and I live in Grants Pass, and I've done a lot of trapping and feeding as well. Joco Spay and Neuter is fantastic. I've worked with them, and they're there 7 days a week, rain, shine, snow, they're always there feeding. So I hope that you will return the shelters to these cats. Please be an advocate for them. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
My name's Janet Elseth from Grants Pass, and I'm also someone in favor of putting the shelters back. It kind of seems quite silly that it's not okay to have those there when the park is full of tents and people in cars and big mess. So I'm involved with trapping and cats too, and so anyway. That's all.
Is there anybody else? All right, we'll close public comment and turn it back to council for discussion. Val, then Brian, then Rob.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you, Dwayne, I am the cat counselor, because when I first came on council in 2015 is when I came on, the first thing I dealt with was a neighborhood in my ward, Churchill, who was having a massive cat influx, feral cat. They were finding dead cats in their yard, decomposing. I mean, it was just horrible. And there was one person who just left food out all the time. And so it was causing a lot of problems. So I got involved with that group. I got involved with our police. I got involved with the Josephine County Public Health and what can be done, what laws can be brought forth. And of course, it became kind of a joke because it was like, wait a minute, do we really think our sheriff and police can deal with taking care of feral cats? No, that's not something that they, at this point in time, can even begin to deal with. And so I got very involved with people like Joco Spay and Neuter, and realized and did a lot of research and realized how important this TNR, Trap, Neuter, and Release program is. They came to the rescue of that neighborhood, caught cats, had them spayed, returned them, and it got it under control. Since that time, I mean, previous to that, I'd also had time at the Grants Pass High School back in 2010 where there was a house that also was, the same problem was going on at the house. And I knew that because I brought my dog down. And unfortunately, under the fence when I was walking my dog killed a couple of cats that just darted out underneath. And that's when I recognized it was a problem. And then it went on to where we caught the person from that house with a big burlap bag full of cats, dumping them at local elementary schools. And so it was just which is where I ultimately got one of my cats from, is from that, and we were able to clean up that house. So it's just like this organization of volunteers has out there in our community doing a service that is huge. Cats multiply, they can have up to 3 litters a year. And I did talk to the Rogue Valley, Josephine County Animal Control today. They take in average of 1,300 cats per year. And they could take in a whole lot more. That's all they can handle to take care of. They take in far fewer dogs. And so as much as people think, the dogs are the problem, actually, it's feral cat issues that take up a good part of their time. So I am thankful for this group of people that is out there trying to solve the problem. So the fact that there hasn't been complaints in the 18 years just kind of shows me that this is something that's working in our community. I've seen them come to the forefront and help solve the problem. I don't think this is a group that I want to discourage from doing that, because I do know other people who are having that problem. So I would really like, at this point, I do know that there are a few of you here, but I know there are other people too who would like to see something happen. I would like to move forward and try to get some more information as how to draw something up to have this happen in the future. Allow it to happen. Cats do not know public property from private property. I'm sorry. So, saying, hey, well, just move them over to the private property, I don't think that's really going to happen. And in all the years that I go down to that park all the time to launch my boat, I have never seen any problems with cats at all. So I just don't think this is something that really needs to. I'm disappointed in how it happened. I think this kind of comes back to, one counselor, 2 counselors, whatever, and then boom, it's a knee-jerk reaction. And I get and I understand the legal repercussions, but I think at this point in time, if there's never been an issue and if they can provide insurance, I think this is just something that we need to work on, trying to provide the avenue by which they can continue their service to our community.
Brian, then Rob, then Vanessa.
I'll keep it brief because I don't want to be here all night, but I thank the community members that provide this service to our community, and you've been doing it for a long time, so thank you very much. And it sounds like our city attorney said that there's opportunity for us to explore a potential formal agreement to continue doing this, which makes all kinds of sense. So I'm going to make a motion to basically do option 2 up there. Council can elect to explore a potential formal agreement with spay and neuter and other community partners.
Is there a second? Was that Rob?
Okay.
Okay. And discussion on the motion. We did have Rob and Vanessa are first in line if you wanted to speak. Rob?
Yeah, so Valerie, I appreciate the history that I don't think any of us have, so it's great to know that stuff. But I have to ask Dwayne again before I vote on this thing. What's the problem? What problem would we be solving if we were to disallow this program from existing in the park? What problem did this one person who came to you with, what did they claim was going on there?
Well, they said that there were cats getting their property. They also brought up that Sante property about too many cats there, but they were feeding them too. So I was like, well, how can you feed them? And I don't know what to say. I mean, I just ask questions, but I would just say, I mean, I'm going to do whatever council wants in this. I don't really want to take too much side, but I like it to be beautiful, though. There's enough ugliness down that park, so that's the only thing I would like to see. If we're going to put cat boxes, that they be a beautiful cat box, maybe.
Yeah, no interaction. Sorry.
No interaction from the, okay, Vanessa, it was your turn. Are you passing? Okay, Joel.
The Rogue River riparian area is a very valuable wildlife place. And to attract cats there is the wrong place in my mind. I know, like over at Brookings, they got a really nice cat house on the jetty, man-made, doesn't affect the other wildlife. I live about 2 blocks away, or 2 houses away from the river. I've had mink in my backyard, raccoon, possums, a lot of different wildlife, and I know that that's a valuable part of our ecosystem. That's why a lot of people live down there. The other thing I was thinking was, would I do that to my neighbors? Would I start attracting cats to my neighborhood with a very noble thing of sterilizing them? And would my neighbors be okay with that? And some probably would, some probably wouldn't. And this is a public place now. This belongs to everybody.
I'm sorry,
And
there's
there's
no
gonna be
longer
some
any
that-
public comment. I'm sorry, it's just council discussion at this point.
And there's going to be some people that are going to think it's great, maybe the most of them, I don't know, and there's going to be some people that don't. But I think the riparian area of the Rogue River and our park system is worth protecting. And I'm not sure attracting cats there is in the best interest of how we manage that riparian area. When the cats go into the blackberries, where are the birds? They're in the blackberries. And there's a lot of different birds. All you got to do is ask the Audubon Society in their annual count. So I got mixed feelings as we go forward.
Is there any further discussion? All right. Brian made the motion to explore a potential formal agreement with the spay and neuter group. Brian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
DJ?
No.
Joel?
No.
Rob?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
No.
Motion passes 5-3. All right. Next topic here is regarding declaring a local state of emergency for homelessness.
Okay, so I'm going to start with an apology. There is not a presentation that I have prepared for both E and F. However, the resolutions that are in your packet are pretty self-evident, and they are also interconnected. So this came yesterday. First, to declare a local state of emergency for homelessness. There was a set of executive orders that the governor signed back in January that proposed to declare a state of emergency for homelessness in the state of Oregon, and it included all but 25 counties in the state. Josephine County was not included in that emergency declaration, as was most of eastern Oregon and some parts of northern Oregon. Recently, the governor is going to be reconsidering funding requests. And as part of that reconsideration, there's a few things that the city or the community has to establish. They have to establish, one, that the unsheltered population in 2022 must be greater than 30 households, and two, the community has declared a local state of emergency related to homelessness, and at least one of the following is true. The unsheltered homelessness increased by 15% or more between 2017 and 2022, or the rate of unsheltered homelessness in 2022 was 80% or greater. As part of the discussion for the next item, criterions 1A and 1B have been, 1A has been met. And so as a prerequisite to being able to have the governor reconsider granting funding to localities who are seeking to alleviate homelessness, it's necessary to declare a local state of emergency. So on page 324 of your addendum to the packet, there's 5 sections. First, a local state of emergency is declared to exist throughout the city of Grants Pass pursuant to ORS 401-309 subsection 1. It gives counties and cities the authority to declare a local state of emergency. 2, the duration of the local state of emergency will be for a period of 12 months from the effective date of this resolution unless extended by the city council by ordinance or resolution or terminated sooner by the city council. Section 3, nothing in this section shall be construed to affect or diminish the powers of the governor during a state emergency declared under 401-165, basically saying that should the circumstances warrant it, and it probably wouldn't in this case because we're not talking about like a disaster emergency declaration, that the governor would be able to come down and do what she needs to do under the Constitution of Oregon. Section 4 states that the city manager is authorized to take all necessary steps authorized by law to coordinate the response of its emergency, including but not limited to requesting assistance from Josephine County or the state of Oregon. Again, that ties into the next agenda item. And Section 5 is that the declaration of a local state of emergency is effective immediately. So I got a phone call from a counselor earlier today wanting to know exactly what it means and what the governor's powers are under a local state of emergency. And so it has to do with the Oregon Constitution. So the governor's powers during a state of emergency, this is ORS 401-168. During a state of emergency, the governor has complete authority over all executive agencies of the state government and the right to exercise within the area designated in the proclamation all police powers vested in the state by the Oregon Constitution in order to effectuate the purposes of this chapter. So that's police powers according to the state. So the government isn't going to come down and control every little thing that council wants to do with the money. Now, should you declare this state of emergency, apply for funding, and be accepted for that funding, just like any other state funds, there's going to be strings attached. There's going to be certain metrics that we have to meet, certain reporting periods. So none of that is really going to change. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Augustus. Are there questions? DJ?
Yeah, I had a question about Section 4. You went into how it references the next resolution. So city manager authorized to take all necessary steps, authorized by law to coordinate the response of this emergency. So I'm garnering an inference here that this will somehow task the city manager with being the organizer of response to this emergency. That's what I get when I read that sentence, and I take exception to that. I don't believe that's the job of the city manager to organize the response to this emergency. Is that what it's saying?
So I don't think that that's what it's saying. Really, there has to be a point of contact for applying for these monies, trying to coordinate getting the cash from the state. Since we have other circumstances where the city manager is signing these contracts and bringing them before council, I only felt that it was natural that the city manager would be coordinating these responses. Again, we're talking about an emergency that isn't really part and parcel with, and what my opinion is, it's supposed to be for an actual disaster, some sort of natural disaster that's happened. I think that the state of emergency is a little bit loosely used in the state of Oregon. But it would be consistent with what council, has established as the law in the city. So that's my takeaway from it. It would be something that the city manager would be in his capacity, signing as the administrative head of the city.
Other questions? Dwayne, then Rick.
I have questions on number 6. It says, Grants Pass overrepresented with the number of homeless individuals in Josephine County does not have adequate resources. Who determines that?
That Grants Pass is overrepresented with the number of homeless individuals in Josephine County and doesn't have the adequate resources to continue addressing the critical services and infrastructure necessary to humanely serve this population. Who determines that?
Yes, who determines that? Is that us or?
I would definitely say that council's the first step in determining that, yes.
Okay.
There's different agencies that could determine that, but in this situation, the city declaring the emergency, you'd be declaring that.
So we're setting the barrier on that, or the bar for that.
So yeah, if you're looking at this resolution in context, this is you as the city council declaring all of these things in the resolution. And so the call to, I guess I didn't give you the call to action, so that's my fault. The call to action is to approve this resolution as is, to approve the resolution with modifications, or to not approve it at all. And if you don't approve it at all, that kind of makes the next agenda issue moot. So that's my fault. I'm sorry I didn't make that clear.
Okay. And then I'm on the one that called you today, so then we can back out of this at any time. We can send the money back if we don't like the strings attached to it, anything.
I mean, that's almost always.
We have control of our own city's destiny, basically, if there's problems with this.
That's correct. When a city declares a state of emergency, they do so usually because it's a resource-associated call of action. It's because we've expended all of our local resources. Say if it's a flood, we've expended all of our resources to address our issue with a flood. So then we ask the county, by declaring a state of emergency, to assist. The county then expends all of their local resources, and at such time that their resources are expended, then they declare the state of emergency to get state resources, and the state comes down and does that. So this really is, it's an interesting fit, sort of a round hole, square peg type of thing, that the system for the state has been established for unhoused to be put into the emergency management system. But I think part of the decision was that, I'm guessing, would be that by doing so, from a state level, the state, if the process is followed, would only have to be responding to 36 different counties, even less than that, than compared to 208 different cities. So this is a way of trying to administer a program of being able to disseminate resources for a specific issue, which is the unhoused issue.
Secondly, since the county commissioners want no part of this, how does that affect the city? At all? None?
Well, that's why, that is why we're bringing it to you, because we did ask the county commissioners yesterday to do this on behalf of the county, and they declined, and there's a March 10th deadline, and so today is the only meeting
So it
we're
doesn't
having. So we're going to forge ahead with doing it as a city if you're so inclined, and the city theoretically would be the recipient of any funding and wouldn't be able to share it with the entire county.
But that's going to happen anyway. I'm not saying I'm against, I'm just saying that they basically threw this into our hands, basically, to deal with everything.
They supported it. They just said they didn't want to deal with it. And just basically.
That was my
that's what
question.
people- Yes.
Okay.
Okay, are there still questions for Augustus? Rick was next, and then DJ.
Continuation on page 324, item 1, says the city of Grants Pass generally does not receive significant funding to provide for housing or mental health. We just have on track delegating funds to them. So how do we address that requirement?
So what number 2, I think you're referring to the second paragraph. The city generally does not receive significant or ongoing funding from the state or federal government to provide housing, mental health, physical health, or other wraparound services to persons experiencing homelessness. We've received, as far as I'm aware, the Department of Administrative Services grant for $1 million that we just finished spending in January. We've also gotten grants on behalf of other nonprofits, but that's not continuing. It's a one-time grant. And these aren't, and we're not, as far as I'm aware, we're not really getting anything from the federal government. CDBG doesn't cover what we're trying to do. So I would characterize that as an accurate statement, unless council wants to reconsider that.
Okay, thank you.
DJ? Okay, DJ says his discussion. Are there other questions? Okay, this is open for public comment, so if anyone would like to speak on this, please step up, tell us your name and whether or not you live in the city.
So Jed Keller, I live outside of Grants Pass. I've been involved in reading the regulations for the Continuum of Care, which is the state and federal organization that distributes the funds, and my reading of it says that either cities or counties can apply for the funding, going to the question of, do we have to go through the county? And it specifically says the city can go directly to apply for the funds.
Augustus?
So I'd want to expand on that point. That's what the executive order says. The statute itself says that it has to go through the county, but based on the executive order, that's what we're going off of. Because That's what the governor elected to write in her executive orders.
Next.
Hello again, folks. Again, my name's Ruth Daly. I'm a 17-year resident of Grants Pass and 44 years living in Josephine County. I said all this to the commissioners this morning and they chose to ignore it. While I praise our new governor for recognizing the homeless crises in Oregon, I was quite unhappy that our beautiful Josephine County was not included in the initial 11 of our 36 counties to receive funds to address our crises. To my understanding, and statistics support this, the number of homeless folks here in our community meet the criteria for receiving the funds. The County Board of Commissioners have expressed that they will not declare a state of emergency on homelessness, but it's come to my attention that Grants Pass, you, our representatives, can do so and apply for those crucial funds to help our city. My understanding is that this needs to be completed by March 10th, 2023. As a former home birth midwife, hospice nurse, nurse in rural practice, RN care coordinator, mother and grandmother, as well as a mother to a formerly homeless son and sister to a brother who died in his homelessness, I urge you to make the declaration. It's not a difficult decision. It does not matter how you look at it, what political ideals you have, what religious affiliation you might have. All outward and hidden signs and symptoms express the great need for help. Our homeless neighbors are many and represent all of Grants Pass and Josephine County. They are not just the visible people that many do not want to see. They are children, elderly, chronically ill, poor, disabled, those who may have experienced one devastating incident that makes them unable to pay rent. I know this to be true because I have assisted people throughout the city and county for many, many years. We do not have the resources to address this complex issue on our own. We deserve help from our state. As a devoted resident of Grants Pass, where my children were raised and my grandchildren born, I ask again, please, without hesitation, make this declaration and request our rightful assistance from the state for our homeless crises. And I'll just tag on my support for the next resolution too, of requesting to be included in the emergency declaration. Thank you.
Next.
Holly Morton from the county and the city. I will say I hope that we do get assistance with this, but I will say that emergencies come from not taking action early on, and I think that's where we are. You know, all this business of not acting early and allowing a lot of illegal behavior to continue has gotten us to where we are today. And I will also point out that I'm not a fan in any way of the low barrier. So if we do get the money, which I certainly hope you do, these low barrier shelters are just a waste of money. You might as well just throw it in the garbage can. And I'll tell you from personal experience, because my dad was an alcoholic my entire life. I never saw the man sober after maybe noon in my entire life, unless the police picked him up after a family violence issue or something. He cleaned up for a couple of days. And we used to pray that he would get sober. He never did. We took care of, my ex-husband and I took care of him for the last 10 years of his life, and he died an alcoholic. And shortly after that, we took in my ex-husband's brother and family. The baby, 5-year-old, was not potty trained yet. Father was an alcoholic, or a drug addict. The mother was a prostitute. So we took the father and the son into the house because we thought that maybe taking care of them would help. We brought him into the house. The kid thrived. He's fantastic. We got him into a GATE program by the time he was 2 years old, got him potty trained pretty quickly. The father went on public assistance not very long after that and spent the rest of his entire life on public assistance using drugs. You got to clean them up first. Clean them up first, because they'll never be able to do anything in their life if they're not clean. And the fact that, you just want to put them in a house, put a house, a lid over the top of them, doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't solve it at all. All it does is throw away money, and I'm tired. I've thrown away an awful lot of my money for people who are sick. Get them well, then house them. If they're not willing to get well, that just can't be all of our problem. I'm done for the evening because this whole issue just makes me sick to my stomach. But I hope that you think about really helping people, not just enabling people to be sick for the rest of their natural lives.
Hi, this is David Dapper. You know, I'm a city resident, and I agree with that of enabling. But anyone who doesn't think this is an emergency doesn't own a home by a park. I mean, we got to get the drug addicts and the sex offenders out of the park, as well as the few true homeless. But the majority of them, we got to get them out of our park so our families can live decent lives in our homes without having to call the police 3 times a week, and not even due to PTSD recommendations, not even allowed to go look at the park. That's how bad it is. Looking at the park triggers me, and it's from a skull fracture injury, but it really is something people. There's a lady who lives across from. And she puts a picture, this van has more crap that's bigger than the van parked right in front of Riverside, right across the street from her house, and that's what her and her kids get to look at. Person that lives by Morrison Park put a thing up that they can't go out there because people are pulling out their stuff and peeing at their kids. Come on. This is animalistic, not even human. But we need to do something for the people. The regular people that want to live like humans and live in our homes safely. Thank you. And consider that property, please. Just one property. I don't think anyone's got a gripe about it. You know, it's not by any, kids playing. But yeah, this is definitely an emergency. And the state legalizing heroin and meth, they should foot the bill for doing that. And the 72-hour thing they get where they can do whatever they want and the police can't do anything for 72 hours. Okay, Miss Governor, foot the bill for the situation you helped create. This is ridiculous.
Rebecca Anderson, Josephine County and Grants Pass. I have an Airbnb here in town, and the people like to stay there. It's just up here on C Street, and they love to walk downtown and go to the restaurants, and they really enjoy that, and I want them to enjoy that. And I know one night some friends and I, a couple of years ago, went to the Twisted Court for a nice dinner, and we came out. And there was a really unfortunate person sleeping in a doorway. I was not appalled by it or offended by it in the sense that I was afraid of him or anything like that. It was more, it just broke my heart to see that. And that's really not what I want my guests to experience when they come here. And you can't paint every homeless person with the same brush. They're all different. Their circumstances are different. And they need help. They need housing. You can't solve the problems you have created with the same thinking. We're going to have to come up with creative ideas to make this happen. And I think part of that is going to be taking a look at zoning on houses in the county and in the city that do allow auxiliary units, that do allow people to take somebody in their home and have that extra income, the income from our Airbnb. For us as retired people, I've done a lot of jobs. I've run strings of racehorses, I've flown internationally, I've been down the road. And the Airbnb is wonderful. It does have its problem like anything else does. But, I'm paying into the taxes in the city. I'm also, the short-term tax is paid into the city. A lot of these things are not really being capitalized on county-wise. And when somebody, it doesn't have to be an Airbnb, it can just be able to have the zoning, to have somebody come in and remodel your home or an auxiliary unit on that, and be able to rent it to somebody who actually has a job and would like a nice place to stay. So I think there are other ways to look at this, but we definitely need the funding and get something started. Thank you.
So I'm Judy Ano with Grants Pass, and well, I've already said how I feel about supporting the homeless, but I know I can't ask a question, but basically I definitely would like you to support this resolution. And the warming, it mentions that the warming shelter and the emergency shelter need operations funds, and the Grants Pass doesn't have it. So it sounds to me like that is the specific appeal. I believe that smaller municipalities have to be specific. I'm not sure about that. It's hard to understand. But, so that's great. Those are good initiatives that we need to keep going. We can't let them just go away. I understand, I know the warming shelter is successful, and we have about 45 people there. I know there's 26 people or so at the regular shelter. I don't know too much about it, but I wish we could ask for more if we could. That would be my only comment. But don't make that. Still do this if you can't do that. So thank you.
Jennifer Blemay, Grants Pass resident. I think what I wish the most from all the counselors here is that you have a face of what homelessness looks like here. It's not drug dealers. It's not, I know we see the syringes and we see the bad effects, but you need to know the people that are out there. I know a man that has been on the streets named Thomas since we moved here 7 years ago. And it is heartbreaking to see what has happened to him. I also know that there was a 20-year-old, although she looked like a teenager, girl that I spoke with just last week. Her name was Lacey. And she said without the warming shelter, she would be dead. This is a girl that was super petite, way malnourished, and she's living under the bridge where we would take her, where the boats used to like dock off. If you haven't been in that area, it's horrible. Nobody should be living like that. And I don't believe in enabling addiction, but I also don't believe that shelter should be considered a luxury to people. I mean, we've considered that we feed all our kids in schools because most of a huge population of our kids are in poverty. From my past experience as a foster parent, you also need to picture that people that are on the streets are probably foster kids that have aged out of the system and they're not getting help anymore. So please just try to take in a little bit of compassion in what you're saying, and same to people that might be watching this or listening, because there are real people out there and there's no they, us. We're all people. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this issue? All right, I'll close public comment and turn it back to council. DJ.
Yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll on this, but going back to what I said about the section 4, I understand better why that's in here, because that's kind of boilerplate for your typical state of emergencies, kind of like we did with COVID, you know, which was a recent experience that we had. But Aaron had mentioned something earlier, square peg, round hole. I'd like to square peg, square hole this one and either strike section 4 entirely or reword section 4, because this is not that circumstance where we need a hierarchy of response because we have a disaster on our hands, which is presumptively what section 4 is kind of all about here. Of course, if my colleagues here are kind of reading that the same way I am, what I'm really having problems with is coordinate the response of this emergency is dictated as a duty of the city manager in this resolution. and I'm taking exception to that. That's the only issue I have with this. I think this is definitely something we need to pursue.
How about facilitate the response?
You could be right. I could be just really just getting down to the words here, but I want to eliminate any expectation that the employee of the city council is going to be coordinating an effort, right? In response to this. But no, funny, great, a laugh, it is, but.
That was a poor choice of words on my part. I'm
no,
sorry.
You're great. We need some humor up here. That's totally fine. Like, everybody's laughing. It's great.
So I think, so if we were talking, oh man. Coordinating the response, I think I see what you're saying in the sense that you're seemingly putting the onus on the city manager to basically be the puppeteer behind the scenes to make sure that everything is running smoothly. Perhaps facilitate might be a better word, because I think that might solve your qualm about the hierarchy involved.
I just want to circumvent a circumstance where somebody looks at this and money comes down and says, that's the guy that's coordinating this. That's the guy that's going to be facilitating. He's going to be deciding, money allocations or whatnot, which is just not the case.
So you can shorten section 4 by just saying the city manager is authorized, but not limited to requesting assistance from Josephine County or the state of Oregon.
Sure. You can do that.
Rick?
On page 324, item number 7, to reduce homelessness and its impacts, the emergency declaration is necessary to enable the city to continue supporting services at its only low barrier shelters. Are the words in there limiting the money, how it would be spent? Would it only be spent for low barrier shelters, or if an opportunity came up for some other homeless situation, we could fund that as well?
I don't think it's going to limit it. The only reason I say that is because if the city does end up getting funding from the state, the allocation of the money and what that can be used for is going to be dictated most likely by an IGA or a contract of some type. So the contract will be the factor in determining how those money can be spent. I don't think that's limiting. It's one of the things that's in the governor's executive order. It's $130 million. One of those things is it's shelter, it's providing affordable housing, doing all sorts of stuff. So I would suspect it would be done by contract.
Thank you.
Brian?
I'll make a motion to approve the emergency declaration with the adjustment of section 4 to take out the section referred to by the city manager referencing authorized by law to coordinate the response of the emergency.
Hang on, so it would read, the city manager is authorized by law to coordinate the emergency?
It would read, the city manager is authorized to request assistance from Josephine County or the state of Oregon.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
That was a motion, so was there a second?
Yes.
Dwayne with the second? Okay, so. Okay, oh, Rick has a special motion. Okay, go ahead with your motion.
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting past 9 o'clock.
All in favor of us extending the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Somebody, Dwayne with the second. I don't know what the procedure is. Motions on top of motions. We're continuing. We're forging ahead. Okay, so just to be clear here, the section 4 is amended to say the city manager is authorized to request assistance from Josephine County or the state of Oregon? Yes? Okay. So is there discussion on the motion? Vanessa?
I just wanted to thank you, Mayor, for your leadership on bringing this forward and having your finger on the pulse of this issue.
I would accept that, except I think it was staff more than me, so thank the staff. But
Correction, thank you for bringing it forward to the Board of County Commissioners. How's that?
well, I did take it to the commission. Valerie? Did you have something? No discussion? Okay, anybody else have discussion? All right, let's see. Brian made the motion to approve the resolution. How do you vote?
Yes.
With an amendment, I'll say too. Val?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. And we will move on to Part B here.
Okay, so as I stated before, the last item and this item are interconnected. This is a resolution of the council to request to be included in the state emergency declaration due to homelessness. And this is getting to the meat of the governor's executive orders that did not include Josephine County. Because we have now declared a local state of emergency for homelessness, we have satisfied the criterias in 6A, B, and B, Roman numeral 2, the rate of unsheltered homelessness being 80% or greater. And that's based on the point in time count from between January 22 and 23, where it was 80% of the total homeless population was based on the point in time count. That was redundant, sorry. Essentially stating that homelessness has caused and is threatening to cause widespread injury to people and property, human suffering, and financial loss for its citizens. This again, 10 through 14 is largely boilerplate for emergencies requesting that assistance from the state. Paragraph 13 outlines that any local government request for state resources to respond or recover from this emergency must be submitted through county or city governing bodies, being the city governing bodies and being the city governing body, and having that in executive order, that is your authority to be to request to be included in this emergency declaration. So your call to action is to approve this resolution, approve it with modifications, or to not approve it. And with that, I'll take questions.
Are there any questions? No? Okay. Is there any public comment on this?
I want to say thank you, and I think this is a step in the right direction, and it's just wonderful. It's not the total solution, but thank you. I know this hasn't been easy for everybody, and a lot of people disagree, but I think it'll help the city. And as I said before, I think we have to look at bigger solutions. You can't just put people in shelters and leave them there. And there has to be entry-level jobs, and there have to be entry-level housing. And allowing people to, when they remodel their homes and fix up a room and are able to rent that out, that's extra money for these people, maybe for an elder or somebody, to be able to rent a room in their house. It doesn't have to be Airbnb. I'm talking about people who have jobs that have nowhere to live. So that's another piece of this puzzle, and I hope that's going to be considered down the line. I'm working on that on a property I have in Malala, and I've run up against zoning problems. And it's a big issue, but I think that's one thing that can be looked at. The city and the government shouldn't have to provide all the housing, but allow the citizens to be able to provide some of that housing in addition to what is being done. And thank you for passing the resolution.
Any additional comment? Okay, we'll close public comment and open it up to council for discussion. Dwayne, then Val.
I move to approve the resolution requesting the governor to include grants passed in Joseph County and Oregon state of emergency due to homelessness.
I'll just second that.
Val seconded that. Was that the alternative one here?
Yes.
Okay.
Change the motion.
Any discussion on the motion? No? Okay, so Dwayne, you made the motion to approve the resolution. How do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 8-0. Thank you all for supporting that, and we will get the request off to the governor before the deadline. Next up, we have an appointment to make. So this is regarding our Committee on Public Art. You should all have a bright yellow sheet here in front of you. We have 3 vacancies on the committee, and 4 candidates have applied in alphabetical order. They are Judith Basker, Robin Forbes, who is currently serving, Cal Kenny, who is currently serving, and Joan Marie Robertson Giesler. The committee has unanimously, with whatever, all the members present, I guess, were at the meeting, and unanimously recommended 3 applicants to the council for approval. They were Cal Kenny, who they said he is doing a great job as chair and has been a longstanding member. Robin Forbes, who has been a good and active member and has a good track record. And Judith Basker, who Cal recommended and spoke very highly of her, likes her education background and extensive experience in fundraising. So, councilors have forwarded these down to me. Let me just check and see if we're... Okay, so we have 7 of you have given a nod to Judy Basker, Robin Forbes, and actually 8 of you have given this, okay, 8 of you have given a nod to Robin Forbes and Cal Kenny, 7 of you to Judith Basker, and 1 of you to Joan Marie Robinson Giesler. So with that, I will take a motion. Brian.
Are we supposed to disclose who the votes were made by? I know the 8 and the 8 is obvious, but then there's the 7 and the 1.
Okay, so, yeah, I can't even read.
Signature is pretty bad. Is that Dwayne? Okay.
That looks like a D and a Y. Okay, so 8 would be all of you, everybody except for Dwayne on Judith Basker, and then Dwayne had the Joan Marie Robertson.
Okay, thank you. I was going to make a motion to approve the 3 that got the most nods.
Okay, is that seconded by Valerie? Any discussion on the motion? Okay, so the motion would be to appoint Judith Basker, Robin Forbes, and Cal Kenny. And Brian, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Lost Rob. Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. All right. Yeah, we lost Rob. He may have been here when he filled out the slip. I don't know. Okay, public comment. So this is an opportunity to for the public to address the City Council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item on the agenda. The idea is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not two individuals. And at the conclusion of public comment, council will have an opportunity to respond. The meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city policy, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve the matter. David has left. This other person has left. They're all gone. Is there anybody here who wanted to speak? You've all said your piece. In that case, I will close public comment. And council, did you want to review public comment? Yeah.
I'm going to comment now because some of their comments weren't really about what we were doing. So I just wanted to comment. You know, we do have 70 beds at the Mission, so we do have some beds available if people want to go there. There is open beds, and I do want people to know that the Mission does have 70 beds. And so if someone's looking for something to sleep, there's a nice warm bed there. And they have 3 meals a day. So just want to make sure people know that.
Any other further, okay. Karen, how about the email update? So there were hang on just a second. Sorry, Joel had something.
Well, I just wanted to mention that 60 of those 70 are now occupied. You probably know that. Or are you talking about 70 additional beyond the 60 already there?
When I talked to Brian the other day, he said he had 70 available beds.
Okay, so yeah, there's 60 people already there.
Okay, Karen, the emails.
So 2 emails regarding problems at Riverside Park, one requesting council to consider the Flying Larka Community Center, one titled Residents and Taxpayers Held Hostage to the Homeless, one regarding homelessness, please demand adherent to local laws, and one requesting reinstating 24-hour service at the post office.
Okay. Just a comment there on the post office one. I guess we have our comments before the emails, but that is regarding the open lobby of the downtown post office. They are now closing it in the evening, and it's open, I think, for half a day on Saturday, but it's not open 24/7 due to an issue with people trying to sleep in the lobby. Okay, I think that brings us to council consent agenda, which are items of such routine nature without controversy that they may be approved with a single action. Did your questions get answered earlier, Vanessa? You don't want to pull anything off?
I had sent a couple recommended edits to Karen, so I'm not sure how to proceed with that. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I just knew you had a question about this, so I didn't know if it got resolved.
It did, yeah.
Okay. In that case, Valerie, would you please read the consent agenda?
Yes, consent agenda for March 1st, 2023. A resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an application upon award, and upon award, enter an agreement to accept congressionally directed funding to help finance the Redwood Highway waterline looping, project number WA6362. B, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract establishing a side account for the city of Grants Pass unfunded actuarial liability for the public employees retirement system. C, resolution amending the comprehension fee schedule to include tiered annexation application fees. D, resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a grant application and upon award, enter into an agreement for Oregon State Parks and Recreation Department's local government grant program for trail development on Dollar Mountain. E, resolution authorizing the city manager to execute change order number 1 with Robertson Sherwood Architects, PC, for property survey and geotechnical report, project number LB6393, stage 1. F, motion approving the comprehensive plan amendment to the urban area transportation system plan, findings of fact. G, motion acknowledging the receipt of the monthly investment report for January 2023, and motion approving the minutes of various committees. City Council meeting February 15th, Sustainability and Energy Action Task Force meeting January 11th, Tourism Advisory Committee meeting January 3rd, Tourism Advisory Committee meeting September 6th, Committee on Public Art meeting January 10th, Historical Buildings and Sites Commission meeting November 10th, and the Housing Advisory Committee meeting of November 18th. And with that, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? Rick, thank you. And we don't talk about this one, so Valerie, how do you vote?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. We have lost Councilor DeLagrange. Yeah. Okay. Mayor and council comments. Did you have anything you wanted to bring up tonight? DJ?
Yeah, I think council needs to determine how to proceed with strategic planning. So I'd like to see that make it on the agenda as soon as possible. It was recommended by staff that we go from last year, so it's up to council, and we should have a meeting to determine that.
Were there 2 other counselors who are interested in having that come back on the agenda? Dwayne and Rick? Okay. Anything else tonight? Okay. Staff, anything you wanted to bring up tonight? No? Okay. No executive session. I guess we can move on to item 8. Valerie?
I make a motion to adjourn.
DJ, thank you. All right, all in favor of adjourning this evening?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned, and we will meet. It's a ways out. I think it's the 13th. Okay, Monday the 13th.